The Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Almighty God, we give thanks to you, the Creator of the universe, and humbly beseech you to direct and prosper the deliberations of the members of this House here assembled for the advancement of your glory and the trust and welfare of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Grant that peace and happiness, truth and justice may be established among us for all generations.
Announcements by the Deputy Speaker.
Honourable members, Mr. Ganga Singh, MP, member for Shogunas West, has requested leave of absence from today's sitting of the House. The leave which the member seeks is granted.
Bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers.
The Minister of Finance.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I have the honor to lay the following papers. The report of the Auditor General of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago on the financial statements of the Princestown Regional Corporation for the year ended September 30th, 2015. The consolidated financial statements of the Point Lisas Industrial Port Development Corporation Limited for the year ended December 31st, 2017. Excuse me. I beg to move that paper 1 be referred to the Public Accounts Committee and paper 2 be referred to the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee.
Honourable members, the question is that paper 1 be referred to the Public Accounts Committee and paper 2 be referred to the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee. All in favour say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it. The Minister of Community Development, Culture and Arts.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I have the honour to lay the following papers. The final audit report of the Trinbago Unified Calypsonians Organization, TUCO, for the period October 2013 to September 2016. The final audit report of the National Carnival Bands Association, NCBA, operations for the period October 2013 to September 2016. The final audit report of Pan Trinbago's operations for the period October 2013 to September 2016. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
The member for Couva, Chief Whip.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. In the absence of the member for Couva North, I have the privilege and the honour to present the 8th report of the Joint Select Committee on Local Authorities, Service Commissions and Statutory Authorities, including the THA, 3rd Session 2017 to 2018, 11th Parliament on an inquiry into the efficiency and effectiveness of the Statutory Authorities Service Commission. Thank you.
Member for Lupino, Borne West.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I have the honor to present the 8th report of the Joint Select Committee on State Enterprises, 3rd Session 2017-2018, 11th Parliament on an inquiry to examine the operations of National Quarries Company Limited and to determine its effectiveness in fulfilling its mandate by maintaining quality of product and stability of supply. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Prime Minister's questions, urgent questions.
Member for Pointe-a-Pierre.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. To the Minister of Education, based on a recent report concerning protests by school bus drivers for the non-payment of salary arrears by the Ministry of Education in the sum of $20 million, could the Minister state the reason for the non-payment and the time frame in which this issue will be rectified?
Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, let me explain, as I have done on several occasions, with respect to payments to the maxi-taxi operators. The maxi-taxi operators are engaged in a contract with the Public Transport Service Corporation. They have to submit their invoices to the PTSC, who will examine the invoices, and once those invoices meet the required stipulations, they are then sent to the Ministry of Education for payment. I have been informed, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that at the Ministry of Education, there are no outstanding invoices awaiting payment. Thank you very much.
Member for Pointe-a-Pierre, supplemental.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. To the Minister of Education, could the Minister of Education state, while he just stated there are no outstanding payments as far as the Ministry of Education, does he know if there are any payments waiting to be verified, outstanding at the PTSC end of the process?
Minister of Education.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I don't know whether the member for Pointe-a-Pierre is asking me to go to PTSC and find out whether there are outstanding invoices. As where I stand, I am not aware of whether there are outstanding invoices residing at the PTSC. What I know is that at the Ministry of Education, there are no outstanding invoices awaiting payment. Thank you very much.
Member for Urupuch West.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. To the Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, in relation to a video currently circulating on social media depicting the killing of juvenile sharks via a transparent net in the Moruga waters, could the Minister indicate if any investigation has been launched into this matter?
Minister of Agriculture, Lands and Fisheries.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I can confirm that the Fisheries Officer with responsibility for the Moruga area has reviewed the video and is in consultation with the Director of Fisheries to determine what action, if any, needs to be taken in relation to this matter. Thank you.
Urupuch West, supplemental.
Honourable Minister, do you think that the transparent net may be plastic thrown into the waters by persons? The transparent net.
Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries.
Madam, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'm at a loss. I don't think the technology has reached a point where the sea can convert discarded plastic into a fishing net. So the answer has to be no. I don't think that discarded plastic has turned itself into transparent net for the purpose of catching the juvenile sharks.
Member for Urupuch West, question number 3.
Thank you to the Minister of Education. With regard to a video currently circulating on social media depicting two persons engaging in sexual activity in a classroom, Could the minister indicate if any investigation has been launched into this development?
Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I have seen a video circulating on social media, but I cannot ascertain whether that video really depicts two persons having sex. I really can't decide that. What I know, however, is that the contents of that video has nothing, absolutely nothing, to do with any of our primary or secondary schools. And therefore, it is unwise or unnecessary to launch any investigation. Thank you very much.
Supplemental, Orupuch West.
Clearly.
Honourable Minister, have you or your department has liaised with the cybercrime unit to verify the authenticity of that video?
Member for Minister of Education.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I just said just now, it is unnecessary, unwise for the Minister of Education to delve further into that. Our business is educating our children, not to advocate anything with respect to the videos that show any kind of type of behavior. Thank you.
Orupuch West, would you give way to your colleague? All right, Couva South.
So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is the Minister of Education telling this House that he is not concerned about the holistic development of the citizens of the country that fall under his jurisdiction?
Member, that's a statement, no question. So can I get the question again, member, honorable member? Question.
I simply ask the Minister of Education to clarify whether he, as the Minister of Education, in relation to education institutions being under his jurisdiction, if he is concerned about the holistic development of students in Trinidad and Tobago. Simply as that.
I will not entertain that question, member. Brigadier, and one supplemental. Okay, I'll go to question number 4 then. Member, well, I'll call on the Chief Whip. Kumuto Manzanilla is not present.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. On behalf of the member for Kumuto Manzanilla, who is stuck in traffic.
Let's hear the question, please.
Who is stuck in traffic outside. Question number 4 to the Minister of Rural Development and Local Government. Given the impending onset of the rainy season and the hurricane season, could the Minister inform this House as to the level of preparedness of the various regional corporations?
I'll call on Leader of the House.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Rural Development and Local Government, the 14 municipal corporations have been put on alert and all resources have been given to the disaster management units in the event of a hazard impact. Municipal corporations will utilize an all-of-corporation, all-of-government approach when dealing with the onset of any inclement weather systems. The Senior Disaster Management Coordinator at the Ministry and the municipal corporations, through their disaster management units and public health, have taken a number of steps to mitigate the effects of flooding and other natural disasters, such as the cleaning of local drains and minor watercourses, cutting of trees that may create a hazard, and the training of volunteers in community emergency response, shelter management, and first aid. They have also made efforts to stock both sandbags and sand for pre-event distribution in vulnerable areas. Shelters have been placed in a state of readiness with assigned shelter managers and necessary equipment. Thank you very kindly, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Questions on notice, questions for oral answer.
Leader of the House.
Thank you very kindly,
Members,
Mr. Deputy
members,
Speaker.
please. Leader of the House.
Thank you very kindly, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, There are six questions for oral answer. We'll be answering all 6. There are no questions for written answer. Thank you very kindly, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
I recognize Orpuch West.
Question number 257 to the Minister of Education.
Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Ministry of Education, through the Student Support Services Division, SSSD, has implemented a system of identification, referral, and the support for students who present themselves with symptoms associated with mental health. Students who display any sudden or dramatic changes affecting their performance, attendance, or behavior are referred to the SSD by school personnel. Initial screening by SSSD is conducted, and once a child is assessed for possible mental health issues, the parent is contacted, and a referral is immediately prepared for the child guidance clinic. In instances where a student presents with suicide thoughts on the school compound, the parent is contacted and assistance is sought from the nearest health facility. Follow-up visits to the home of students are made by school social workers to assess any environmental factors associated with the behavior. The student is allowed to return to school once a medical certificate of clearance is produced from a health facility or medical practitioner, and ongoing support is provided by Student Support Services personnel to ensure a smooth transition back to school. Further, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Ministry of Education collaborates with several stakeholders, such as the Ministry of Health and the Trinidad and Tobago Association of Psychologists, to provide support for students and training of Ministry of Education personnel to identify students with mental issues. Thank you very much.
Supplemental, Orpuch West.
Minister, how many school social workers are there in the ministry? And I believe I'll have to ask the other question to ask how many are assigned to each school.
We'll take one at a time, member, so we go with the first one. Minister of Education.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I will provide the member for Orpuch West with the specific information on written request. Thank you very much.
Right. Supplemental, Orpuch West. The second question now.
The second question, I believe the minister will also have to be quite follows how many are assigned to each school.
The records. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. How many social workers are assigned to each school?
Member for Orpuch West, question 258.
Question number 258 to the Minister of Education.
Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, our data do not corroborate an increase in the number of students engaging in sexual activity in our primary and secondary schools, as asserted by the Member of Parliament for Orpuch West. In fact, data provided by the Student Support Services Division show a 4% decline in sexual inappropriate behavior in 2017 over 2016 at the secondary level. Notwithstanding this, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Ministry of Education considers every incident of sexual misconduct as one too many, and I am pleased to advise that sexuality and the sexual health education is taught at both the primary and the secondary level through the Health and Family Life Education curriculum. This curriculum is designed to increase students' ability to make informed choices and practice responsible behavior. At the primary level, topics on sexuality and the sexual health are discussed from as early as infant year 1 and continue throughout the class levels, incorporating areas such as growth and development with a focus on puberty, the concepts of gender and sexuality, respect for self and others, sexual health and factors, and those things that influence sexual expressions. At the lower secondary level, it is taught as a separate subject, and some of the themes explored include changes associated with puberty, managing inappropriate sexual behavior, and the impact on school life and sexual reproductive health, including sexually transmitted diseases. Thank you very much.
Supplemental, Brigadier Sanwan.
Minister, after reading that lengthy discussion, could you indicate and confirm, right, whether sex education is definitely being taught in schools at this present time?
Minister of Education.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, sometimes, I wonder at the level of comprehension. I have stated specifically what is being taught in our schools. I explained that at the level of the primary school, this is immersed within the curriculum. And at the secondary level, it is a standalone subject. I said that. And the member for Brigadier, you went to a school that I'm associated with. I'm disappointed. Thank you very much.
Supplemental, Brigadier Sanwan.
Supplemental. Because of the school I went to, and you know what school it is, you are then confirming that sex education is done in Trinidad and Tobago. Am I right or wrong?
Minister of Education.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, he is always wrong, as I'm advised. Sex education is handled through the HFLE curriculum. And I've been saying that. Do I have to explain it word for you so that you'll understand?
Yes. Right. Supplemental. Member for Faizabad is not here, so I'll call on the Chief Whip.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Question number 269 to the Minister of Health on behalf of the member for Faizabad.
Minister of Health.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The investigation commenced on the 30th of April and is ongoing. The investigation is being conducted by the General Manager, Quality Improvement and Risk in collaboration with the Manager, Security Services. Due to the nature of the medical treatment that the patient had to undergo, there were several teams of medical care personnel involved in the procedure, and interviews are still being conducted. The investigation is 75% complete.
Member for Urupuch West, question number 259.
Thank you. Question number 259 to the Minister of National Security.
Minister of National Security, question 259.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Child Protection Unit of the Trinidad Police Service continues to collaborate with the Children's Authority in responding to emergency reports. Representative of the CPU will continue to accompany members of the emergency response team of the authority in conducting home, school visits, and community inquiries, especially in areas deemed to be of high risk in volatile situations, where the safety of the authority's officer may be jeopardized. The presence of the Child Protection Unit will also provide access to certain police powers that the authority does not share. Furthermore, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Trinidad Police Service is currently reviewing the investigative process that is employed by the Child Protection Unit in matters related to child sexual abuse. The intention of such review is to devise a system which will generate an improved prosecution rate of these offenders. It is expected that this system will be finalized and operationalized by the end of June 2018, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Supplemental, Urupuch West.
Honourable Minister, what is the status of the sex offenders registry?
Minister of National Security.
The status, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the registry is ongoing and is handled by the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service.
Question number 270. I'll call on the Chief Whip.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. On behalf of the member for Faizabad, question number 270 to the Minister of Health.
Minister of Health.
Thank you very much again, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Yes, there are X-ray services for dental patients in the public health sector. A total of 6 facilities are outfitted with X-ray units that have been commissioned and operational. These facilities include 1, the Beach Health Center, 2, the Caranage Health Center, 3, the Mayaro District Health Facility, 4, the Mayaro Health Center, 5, the Valencia Health Center, and 6, Eric Williams Medical Sciences Complex, Mount Hope. Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Chief Whip, next question.
Question 271 to the Minister of Education on behalf of the member for Faizabad.
Minister of Education.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I stand on the 5th occasion to answer questions.
All right. All right.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Ministry of Education has a stated policy that governs the admission of students into public primary schools. Where there are limited spaces available, priority must be given to applicants residing in the catchment area of the school. Catchment area is defined as 3 kilometers from the school. This is not a new directive to primary schools, but has been in effect as far back as 1994. Mr. Deputy Speaker, as recent as February 2018, the Ministry of Education, in consultation with the Association of Dean Nominational Boards of Education, had agreed to the application procedure for the admission of students in primary schools. Thank you very much.
Go ahead, Clerk.
Request for leave to move the adjournment of the House on definite matters of urgent public importance. Statements by ministers.
Minister of Community Development, Culture and the Arts.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I have been authorized by the Cabinet to make the following statement subsequent to the laying of the final audit reports for Tobago Unified Calypsonians Organization, TUCO, National Carnival Bands Association, NCBA, and Pan Trinbago. The Ministry of Community Development, Culture and the Arts is charged with the responsibility of implementing policy initiatives for the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago as it pertains to the development and support of innovation and creativity in the cultural sector. In furtherance of this mandate, the Ministry provides funding to the 3 special interest carnival groups through the National Carnival Commission, NCC, of Trinidad and Tobago for the efficient and effective presentation of carnival as well as other carnival-related activities. The execution and management of these carnival-related activities and the hosting of the Carnival Festival itself have been under criticism and scrutiny by members of the special interest groups, other cultural stakeholders, and the general public. Among the more serious criticisms are the disbursement and alleged mismanagement of funds to the stakeholders of these fraternities. In an effort to enhance the transparency and improve the internal controls of the 3 special interest carnival groups, namely TUCO, NCBA, and Pan Trinbago, the Ministry of Community Development, Culture and the Arts procured the services of an auditing firm to conduct a review of the income and expenditure, financial reporting, and governance processes of the above-mentioned interest groups for the period October 2013 to September 2016. All tendering processes were administered, and Ernst & Young Services Limited was contracted to conduct audit reviews on the operations of the interest groups. The scope of work of the audit for the period October 2013 to September 2016 included 1. Governance and executive oversight, 2. Internal control environment, 3. Executive recruitment and compensation, and 4. Analysis of revenue and expenditure. A summary of the main findings as reviewed and audited by Ernst & Young Services Limited revealed the following. The special interest groups are heavily dependent on government subventions for annual revenue. Their annual budget allocations are usually significantly less than their requests to the NCC. Key accounts and receipts were not properly checked and accounted for with respect to the receipt of revenue from the major carnival-related events. Policies and procedures were not formally approved and/or consistently adhered to. Adequate records for the receipt and payment of suppliers' invoices were not maintained. Payments to suppliers were not duly authorized as per the accounting policy and procedure. Tenders are not documented for the selection of vendors for significant purchases over $100,000, and more so, there was no evidence to suggest that tendering processes were conducted before vendors were selected. Conflicts of interest, executives being awarded contracts for the procurement of goods and services. The required statutory payments were not remitted to the relevant financial institutions from July 2015 to present, as funds were not available to pay these amounts. Bank accounts, receivables accounts, and payables are not periodically checked and reconciled in the current year. Budgets were not formally approved by the executive. Lack of authorization and accountability for the issuance and receipt of company funds. Negative net current assets value over the period 2013 to 2017. Increases in bank overdrafts, loans, and amounts payable in relation to events held for financial years 2015 and 2016 respectively. Limited guidelines on the recruitment and compensation for members of the executive. Inadequate accounting controls and the inability to determine the source of funds for financial transactions. Mr. Deputy Speaker, due to the fact that each of these entities, NCBA, Trinbago, and Tuku, received considerable funding from the government of Trinidad and Tobago, the findings of the audits are of great concern to the Cabinet, the Ministry, and the citizens of this country. For this reason, Cabinet has directed that the audit reports of the special interest groups be forwarded to the Auditor General for provision of specific recommendations to the Ministry of Community Development, Culture, and the Arts, which will increase the level of accountability, transparency, as well as value for money invested in the carnival product through the interest groups. Mr. Deputy Speaker, cognizant of the exigencies of the situation, Cabinet has requested an urgent response within 1 month from the Auditor General. This will facilitate the necessary adjustments in financial arrangements for Carnival 2019 between the NCC and the special interest groups which sit on its board. After receipt of the Auditor General's recommendations, the decisions of the Cabinet on this matter will be communicated to the Parliament in a subsequent statement. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I thank you.
Personal explanations, introduction of bills, motions relating to the business or sittings of the House and moved by a minister, public business, private members' business, motions.
I recognize the member for Naparima.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I beg to move the following motion standing in my name. Whereas the Minister of National Security is responsible for ensuring public safety by the maintenance of law and order and the effective oversight of the national security infrastructure, and whereas the number of citizens who have lost their lives to the criminal element since September 2015 has risen astronomically to unprecedented levels, leading to a nation paralyzed by fear, and whereas women, children, and the elderly have been under attack in the most vicious and brutal ways ever experienced as a result of the rampant and emboldened criminal elements, And whereas the actions and the inactions of the Minister of National Security have demonstrated his failure to properly discharge his functions, and whereas the conduct, actions, and non-performance of the Minister of National Security have been the subject of widespread adverse commentary, criticism, and censure by citizens, the media, and civil society, which has undermined public confidence in him, be it resolved that this House express its lack of confidence in the Minister of National Security and call upon the Prime Minister to revoke his appointment. Mr. Deputy Speaker, under this Minister of National Security, our nation struggles to escape from the grip of fear criminals. His failure to manage the increasing crime levels has impacted our freedom, our business, our pockets, and our sense of safety. Criminals are more brazen. They walk our streets and rob and shoot in broad daylight. Crime no longer has any restriction. The whole of Trinidad and Tobago, including the constituency of Naparima, is a hotspot. His plans are fruitless. All talk, no action. He has done nothing to address the problem at source and prevent the creation of more criminals while simultaneously dealing with the current ones. The Minister of National Security has failed our country and failed the office he holds. Mr. Deputy Speaker, first and foremost, I represent the over 50,000 constituents of Naparima constituency.
Speaker,
over 50,000.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, Standing Order 4810, has the member been given permission to read? The member is not reading. The member was reading.
Hold on, excuse. Member for Princestown, it is too early, right? There's a procedure. The member got up and went according to the procedure. You did not. Right? There's a procedure. Members, I have only recognized the member for Naparima, who is on his legs. Right? Member for Naparima, proceed, and I'll be guided accordingly as we go along in terms of the standing order that the member rules.
Thank you very much,
Proceed.
Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, in Naparima, we have had 14 murders since this Minister of National Security came to office. I could call the names, I could call the names, the addresses, the ages, the suffering that these 14 murders have presented in our constituency. We have Eric Ganesh, 19 years, a male. He was killed on the 10th of June this year. He was shot, unsolved. Dipchan Hiralal, Williamsville, shot, murder unsolved. Radha Baldio, shot, murder unsolved. Dheeraj Bidari, chopped, murder unsolved. Daniel Cooper, Cedar Hill, shot, murder unsolved. Takari Adhim, male, Takari, stabbed, murder unsolved. CPEP worker Basdio Parmanan, shot, murder unsolved. Carlos Samuel, Kanhai Road, shot, murder unsolved. Kyle Francis, Williamsville, shot, murder unsolved. I could go on and on. It's 14 murders, one resolved, a detection rate of under 10%, that it is unacceptable in a country aspiring to 21st century status.
Member, for the second time, Princestown, I am not tolerating those outbursts. I am taking note, it's the second time. Proceed.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I will get injury time.
Yes, I will be guided.
Thank you. The minister, since this Minister of National Security was appointed in September 2015, there are more than 1,355 murders in Trinidad and Tobago. 1,355 murders. From 2016 to, in 2015, there were 141 murders since September. In 2016, 462, representing a 10% increase over the previous year. In 2017, it escalated to 495 murders, an increase of 7.1%. And in 2018, so far, we have, 257. It could be 270 from what I heard on the radio this afternoon, an increase of 8.2%. So comparing 2015 to 2018, from January to May, murders increased by 45.6% in Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the murder projection for 2018, according to economist Roger Hussein, what is 552, the highest in the history of Trinidad and Tobago. According to reports, in January 2018, the murder toll of 60 murders was the highest ever recorded in a one-month period in Trinidad and Tobago. My researchers have pointed out to me, have recorded 61 murders for May 2018. In 2015, when the UNC, or the People's Partnership government, was in office, there was only 31 murders. There was 31 murders, and today it has increased to 61, almost doubled under the watch of this Minister of National Security. When we look at murders by gender, from 2016 to present, out of the significant number that I just called recorded murders, a total of 1,062 men and 118 females were killed. In other words, 88% of the murders were males and 10% females, under the watch of this Minister of National Security. Too many of our males are dying to guns and murder and the inability and the incapacity of this government to provide safety and security to the citizenry. When we look, Mr. Deputy Speaker, of murders by age group, under 15, 2%. But the critical young male, 16 to 25, 22% of the murders under his watch were in the age group 16 to 25. In the age group 26 to 35, it was 30%. The productive age, 30%. So when we total 16 to 35, we get 52%. So young people have no confidence, have no capacity to survive under this administration. We look at the age group 36 to 45 is 16%, 46 to 55, 9%, 56 to 65, 4%, and 66 and above, 2%. If we total the age group from 16 to 45, 16 to 45, 68% of the murders fall in that category.
Most productive years.
And that, I'm reminded, are the most productive years of our citizens in Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Deputy Speaker, when we look at murders involving domestic relationships, in the past 2 years, more than 50 women who obtained protection orders or restraining orders against their estranged husband and partners are now dead. According to statistics from the International Women's Resource Network, the Minister of National Security is failing our women who have sought protection even from his ministry. Ms. Adriana Rattan, president of the association that I just called, said, and I quote, "Protection orders only serve to infuse more anger into the minds of perpetrators, almost like a gateway to commit heinous acts. And unless and until there's a holistic review of the content of these orders and with guaranteed protection for the victims, the country would continue to lose our women tragically." So when our women go to this government and say, "We need help," the government is unable to protect them, provide protection. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service Public Affairs Officer, ASP Michael Jackman, on May 2018, he said in 2017 there were 1,100 cases of domestic violence reported, of which 43 victims were killed. So far, as of May 25th, May 2018, there have been over 100 reports made to the police. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we look at our witness protection program. Our witness protection support systems have virtually collapsed under this Minister of National Security. According to statistics from the Victim and Witness Support Unit of the TTPS, the number of domestic violence-related murders in 2015 was 15. In 2017, we are told it increased to 43 under the watch of this minister. 15 in 2015, 43. 43 in 2017. Murder detection rate. 2016, 15.2%. This is information from the TTPS website. 2016, it was 15.2%. In 2017, 17.9%. And in 2018, 18.8%. This increase in the detection rate is inconsistent with a country that aspires to provide for the safety and well-being of the citizens. So, Deputy Speaker, we look at foreigners murdered since the Minister of National Security assumed office. Based on records, from 2016 to present, there have been 20 foreigners murdered, mainly Chinese and Guyanese. Chinese 7, Guyanese 8, Jamaican 2, Japanese 1, Venezuelan 1, British 1, Mexican 1, Dominican Republic 1, German 1, 1 Canadian. Mr. Deputy Speaker, Vishnu Narayan, age 56, from Ontario, Canada, was shot dead and dumped at the side of the Usines in Madeleine Pond in December 2017, just a day before he was scheduled to fly back to Canada from vacation. The story was highlighted on all major Canadian networks. The Global News Canada headline, Ontario man murdered in Trinidad. The Huffington Post Canada, in December 3rd, Canadian found dead in Trinidad and Tobago was murdered. The Toronto Star, Canadian man killed while vacationing in Trinidad and Tobago. City News Canada, Ontario man killed while vacationing in Trinidad and Tobago. CTV News Canada, Canadian citizen dead in Trinidad and Tobago. So, Deputy Speaker, we talk about diversification and a tourism thrust. Would Canadians, after reading this and understanding what takes place in Trinidad and Tobago with a Canadian citizen vacationing in our country, it spells disaster for our tourism thrust. The methods of murder since the minister assumed office. We're talking from September 2015 to the present. 1% was strangled. 1% throat slit. And I was listening on the radio coming up today, and they're talking about a couple, I think they were businessmen, and both their throats were slit. Chopped, 2%. Burnt, 2%. Beaten with a blunt instrument, 3%. Stabbed, 9%. And a whopping 74% were killed using guns. So we come to the issue of illegal firearms seized and whether that is having an impact on the reduction of the murder rate. Acting Police Commissioner Stephen Williams at a media conference in December 2017, a media briefing, he said Trinidad and Tobago has seized the highest number of weapons, over 1,000, within the Caribbean region for the year 2017 to date. He said so. For 2017, a total of 1,026 illegal firearms were seized, a 32% compared to 2016, during which 765 firearms were seized. From January to April 2018, compared to the same period last year, there has been an increase in 15.5% in possession of firearms and ammunition offenses, according to the TTPS data. However, there is no relationship between the number of guns seized by the police and gun-related murders. It seems as if the more that they seize, the more murders are committed. And no one knows. There is no data. The Ministry of National Security is not data-driven. No one knows, not even the Ministry of National Security, how many guns there are in Trinidad and Tobago as I speak. Illegal guns. The number of murders by division. Central, 18%. This is since the minister came into office. Eastern Division, 7. Northern, Northeastern, 10. Northern, 22. Port of Spain, 14. Southwestern, 7. Southern, 13. Tobago, 2. And Western Division, 8%. Out of 9 police divisions, the Northern Division has the highest murder rate of 272. 22%. Followed by Central Division and Southern Division. Tobago had 4 murders in 2016. Guess what happened in 2017? That 4 in 2016. In 2017, it increased to 13. In other words, in Tobago, in 1 year, there was a 225% increase in murders. And all this took place while this minister was in office. We note, anecdotally, that the Southern Division is experiencing an increase, an escalation in crime as criminals migrate from the hotspots into what they consider to be safe havens in southern areas. The number of gangs increased exponentially under this Minister of National Security. The Attorney General, the Honorable Attorney General, in piloting the anti-gang legislation, between 2014 and this year, gangs in Trinidad and Tobago have increased 129%, and gang members have increased 60%. And we are seeing, and I'm quoting, an exponential rise in gang activity. He said in 2014, the acting police commissioner said there were 92 gangs with 1,500 members. In 2016, guess what? It increased to 172 gangs and 2,358 members. Today, it has increased again to 211 gangs and 2,458 members. What it is, when this PNM is in government, that the number of gangs and gang members increase exponentially. And what would a responsible government do to stop that pipeline of young males from our secondary school system to our remand yard and our prison? A responsible government would take decisive action to stop that. Gang membership and incentives to join gangs have increased under the watch of this government, and in particular, this Minister of National Security. He has failed, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I go to the cost of crime. This is a burden that our society is bearing. The country is paying a significant price for the incompetence of the Ministry of National Security. The cost of crime. Crime is now a growth industry in Trinidad and Tobago. The only growing industry is funeral homes. And in Princestown, the only industry that has been established around my constituency, in Princestown, along the Naparima Mayaro Road, there is a new building. Guess what, Mr. Deputy Speaker? It is soon to be opened, the J.E. Guide Funeral Home and Crematorium Limited. That is where we reach in this country. According to the United Nations Global Burden on Armed Violence in 2015, methodology used by Roger Hussein, there was a $172 million loss in productive output in 2017. Homicides are having a serious impact on this country. And economist Roger Hussein said, if someone was murdered at age 29, other things being constant, that person loses 31 years in the labor force. The government budgeted to spend $6.4 billion on national security in the current fiscal year. National security is the second largest allocation of the national budget, with education receiving $7.39 million. It is still a huge slice of our budgetary pie for keeping the country safe, as well as to fund the fight against crime. But since coming to office, the Minister of National Security and his ministry has spent over $20 billion of our hard-earned taxes. $20 billion the ministry has spent. Yet this Minister of National Security has failed to deliver on his mandate on providing a safe and secure society. Out of 17 Latin American and Caribbean countries, Trinidad and Tobago ranks 6th for annual cost of crime as a proportion of GDP. 6th. This country loses 2.26% and 3.52% of GDP to crime annually. The cost of crime that we all bear, the incompetence that we all pay for. The IDB report, Restoring Paradise in the Caribbean, Combating Violence with Numbers, looked at crime in 5 Caribbean countries: Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica, the Bahamas, Barbados, and Suriname, and found that government expenditure on crime in Trinidad and Tobago is between 1.04% and 1.68% of GDP, which is above the average for 17 Latin American Caribbean countries. In other words, we are spending more on crime than is the benchmark norm in Latin America and the Caribbean. And we are not getting the results for the money we have invested in the Ministry of National Security. The Honorable Prime Minister, at the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service Manpower Audit Committee function, he said that every murder case that is going through the courthouse costs taxpayers between $1 million and $10 million. So if we eliminate murders or reduce murders, the country saves money. Mr. Deputy Speaker, if we solve the 550 anticipated murders for 2018, this year the legal cost could exceed $1 billion. The macro and micro cost of crime is over $10 billion, $10,000 million, and could be as high as $14 billion annually if one were to quantify government costs, the social costs, and the private costs. And at a previous debate, I indicated some of the costs. If we take, for example, funerals, and let's say each funeral costs $20,000, they cost more. And we project 487 murders. That is $9.74 million we're talking about. National security budget, $6.2 billion. Health costs, loss of external investment, tourism costs, with the travel advisories and tourists like Canadians and friends of mine in Canada, who I studied with in Canada, indicated that they had postponed visits to Trinidad when they begin to read their advisories and read reports of citizens being murdered in Trinidad and Tobago. We have individual costs we all know: burglar proof, CCTV, blink, GPS alarm, psychological costs, loss of breadwinners in our homes. $14 billion this country is paying for the incompetence of the Ministry of National Security. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, we get excuses galore. The government fails to realize that they were elected to govern. And as the member for Tobago West reminded us, we are in charge now, and we have to deal with it. You want to take the advantage of being in charge now, but put the blame on everybody else. So the Prime Minister, Dr. Rowley, asserted, more will die after the opposition failed to support the anti-gang bill. But he was rebuffed by the opposition leader, who instead asserted that the PNM administration was attempting to blame the opposition benches for runaway murder rate under National Security Minister, the Honorable Edmund Dillon. And the excuse to blame the opposition, I heard the minister say, when we say that when the PNM is in power, murder rates increase. And his response was, when the UNC is in opposition, the murder rate increase. I tried to figure that out. I spoke to my 7-year-old granddaughter, and she just stoops and walks away. Does not make sense. The National Security Minister sought to cast blame on the opposition for the crime problem in the country, as he pointed out its failure to support the bail amendment bill last year resulted in more than 1,400 prisoners accessing bail and walking free since August 2016. Blame all wrong. No data, no facts. Get up, catch a vaps, and it sounds nice, and you say it. Dr. Rowley criticized the process for selecting the top cop. Asked whether he knew who was on the short list, he said, I, as Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, I am the person who knows the least about that. And that is part of the stupidness that is going on in this country. Absolve himself. Pontius Pilate. I am not responsible. I do not know what's going on. Blame everybody. Dr. Rowley said it appears as though some are eager because they like to, when you raise these issues and they are incapable of confronting them, they want to make you feel guilty so that they silence you and you self-censor. Dr. Rowley said it appears as though some are eager to report on crime misuse in Trinidad and Tobago. We are not eager to report. It pains me to give this data. This is my country that I love. We on this side are patriots. And it pains us to see what is happening. Cry, cry, my beloved country. Angered by the escalating crime rate, especially domestic-related murders in the last month, Prime Minister Dr. Rowley last night called on women to choose their male companions more wisely. So heaven, blame it. Blame women. Blame everybody except the incompetence of the Ministry of National Security. Failures of their many crime plans. Failures. Absolute failures. They promised to address at-risk youth. That is in the manifesto. To improve legislation to deal with crime. To upgrade national security infrastructure and safeguard our borders. To establish and upgrade our agencies and policies and implement a crime prevention program. Talk with no meaning, with no serious intent to implement. What have they done? At-risk youth. The PNM manifesto falsely claims that they will use police youth clubs. They will use the cadet force, the citizens security program and the like to identify programmatic and strategic prevention and intervention and suppression activities. Nice words. They say they will embed pro-social development strategies towards preventing young persons from becoming involved in offending behavior. And they will implement an aggressive public outreach campaign on effective strategies to combat juvenile violence. Anybody has seen anything in the national community about any public outreach campaign on effective strategies to combat juvenile violence? None of us have seen that. The citizen security program which they sought to use to achieve these things has not been heard of since 2015. They talk about at-risk youth, but they have cut MILAT allocation for 2018 by $4 million. $4 million. They could buy boats from Australia, which we do not need, with money we do not have, but cannot find $4 million for MILAT to save the young inner city males. Many of them are in their constituencies. That is immoral. It is immoral, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Honourable Member, your 30 minutes has elapsed. You have an additional 15. You care to avail yourself? Yes. You care to avail yourself?
Yes. Deputy Speaker, thank you. Their 10-point crime plan was there is a fundamental mistake in their strategy. Their strategy is legislative and not management. The problem with crime is a managerial problem, not a legislative problem. It is an axiom of criminal justice studies that you cannot legislate yourself out of crime. Yet 90% of what they do is legislative. They wanted to become involved in the selection of the Commissioner of Police, legislative. They promised to activate laws as necessary to establish municipal police units in 14 local government agencies, legislative. To amend the existing legislation to give powers to the Police Complaints Authority, legislative. To establish a standing Joint Select Committee of Parliament on Crime, Suppression and Security, legislative. Make the witness tampering an offense, legislative. Make unlawful eviction an offense, legislative. Anti-gang legislation, legislative. They want to, quote, accept the Caribbean Court of Appeal as a final court of appeal, legislative. 8 of their 10 strategies in their crime plan are legislative. And none of them address the fundamental issues of crime and how to address the management issues related to the police and the support services. They promised to upgrade the national security infrastructure and to protect our borders. They have failed. Gang wars and killings continue to evade detection. In 2018, they promised to upgrade the remand yard facility. Failure. 53 million was approved for this project. Nothing, it had no work as far as we know has begun. They have failed to manage our prison system. Failure. They promised to upgrade the immigration detention center. Failure. They promised to establish an offender management program which will manage the inmate population and allow information to be shared with other agencies, as well as improve the accountability of the TTP prison service. Failure. The Forensic Science Center is understaffed.
Member for Laventille West, please. Those outbursts.
Another failure. They talk about porous borders. 336 million spent on the Coast Guard, but we can't see them patrolling our borders and preventing guns, arms, and ammunition from coming in. So, in fact, some people call it the TTGS, the Trinidad and Tobago Ghost Guard, because we can't see them. An article published on June 14, 2018 by Eurasia Review analyzing the TT Coast Guard and the Australian connection said one of the politically charged utterances emanating from the Prime Minister was his accusation that the previous government had run 6 hostile-built fast patrol craft into the ground and that they were not now gathering moss. This is an unfortunate distortion of an even unfortunate saga that led to the vessels being rendered unserviceable. He said that we left him with 12 vessels, and yet they are nowhere to be seen. Illegal immigrants cross our borders at a rate of 150 to 200 per week. We have lost our country. Everywhere you walk in San Fernando, you hear Spanish. Every third lady is a Spanish person. And how do they come in? How many are there? Why can't we not stop them? That is the responsibility of this Minister of National Security. So, here talk. They said in the manifesto, we'll move swiftly to improve the Coast Guard. In the budget, 1 year later, they say we would move swiftly to manage the security and integrity. During the 2017 budget, they say we far advanced in establishing the Joint Border Patrol Agency. During the 2018 budget, we were told all of the new naval vessels are now in operation. But last month, upon his return from Australia, the Prime Minister stated that the coasts of Trinidad and Tobago are very porous and unprotected. So they say one thing, but they forget that we could keep records and we could judge what they said yesterday with what they said today. It is a failure of the Minister of National Security, who in his 2.5 years in office has caused our borders to become more and more unprotected. Agencies that we are supposed to, that they said they would upgrade. And that's why I say it is a management problem, not a legislative problem. He said he will reform, upgrade, and modernize and transform the police service. I want to give a tick. Failure. Establish a police management agency. Failure. Establish a police service inspectorate. Failure. Develop and employ a scientific investigative strategy. Failure. Develop a policy on prison management. Another failure. Failure, failure, failure. In the 2018 budget presentation, they proposed to launch a key initiative, the National Crime Prevention Program. 9 months later, and we're still hearing it will be revealed soon. It's coming like the Galleon passage boat. It's coming soon, but it can't arrive. Can't arrive. And they have now started a strategy of walking. It's Johnny Walker. We are now a walking country. And the Attorney General, he commended the Minister of National Security for his hard work in fighting crime. Right? He said they would focus on guns and hotspots in an attempt to get crime under control. Talk. In a strategy to walk about and hope the criminals will see his face and give up a life of criminality. That is the latest strategy. So since 2016, and it is not new, in 2016 they adopted this walk-in strategy. August 2016, they walked in Enterprise. Crime increased. February 2017, they walked in Point 14, crime increased. February 13, Carnival Tuesday, walkabout, crime increased. And in June 13, a show of force, a glorified walkabout in Laverton, and murders increasing while they walk in. Shameful, disgraceful. This is the country that we love, being taken for a ride. The Minister of National Security was oblivious to the potential gang wars in Port of Spain. He got up and said, in response to a question, he said, there is no gang activity in Port of Spain. I have the report here. He said it in Parliament. But a day later, the TTB say, yes, ISIS fighting Rasta City. So who to believe? Who to believe? The man in charge does not know his ministry. I'll tell you about the weaknesses of their approach. Plenty nice talk and plans that take too long to come into effect. The Enterprise police station is yet to be constructed. Yeah? The Minister of National Security blamed the UNC for dismantling and selling offshore patrol vessels, but fails to answer why, after 3 years, he has failed to reassemble it. We see community patrols by police with their bright blue lights indicating criminals in the air watching the blue lights, and as soon as they drive, they commit the crime. A show of force in Port of Spain will not have any impact on crime. Just like Operation Anaconda, if you recall, in 2002, it did not have that show of force and man walking with gun. That is 17th century policing. Thomas Peel and those fellas. So we have no confidence in this minister. Why? He's a non-performer, much like the rest of his colleagues. No sense of responsibility, blames everyone else. The forensic science still overburdened. No youth incentive programs to prevent the pipeline from our secondary schools to remand yard. The domestic violence cases are not being given the level of attention and severity it deserves. They deserve. His focus is on locking up and not rehabilitating or providing options that disincentivize criminal activity. Failure of the SSA to provide actionable intelligence. We get info on our citizens abroad via CNN, via Fox News, via the US Senate, via Human Rights Watch, but never, not at all, from the SSA. $500 million wasted on that institution. The police force, police service, riddled with corruption. The PNM claim they are tackling corruption. They should have started with the police service and rooted out the bad officers who encourage crime and give the good ones a bad name. It was a special reserve officer, a constable, was arrested recently in London after he was found in possession of cocaine. The last person I would expect to embarrass us on the global arena is a police officer. Why are the rogue officers not being rooted out? But yet we are told, when they had the anti-gang legislation, we gave 7,000 police the right to lock up anybody on suspicion of being a gang member for 72 hours. Suspicion, if you have 10% rogue officers, means 720 police officers could lock up any one of us on the suspicion. They talk about a carnival terror plot. We're not even sure that that is real. We have no data. We're not sure. Absolute failure to manage murders. His failure is costing the country between $10 and $15 million. What is patriotism? I want to focus a little bit on what is patriotism. It's love of country and a willingness to do anything to service the advancement of one's country. It is an act of patriotism if one's country is attacked, that you volunteer to go in the armed service and you lay down your life in defense of your country. It is a patriotic act to sacrifice time and money for one's country. Martin Luther King, Mahatma Gandhi, Malcolm X died, laid down their life for philosophy tied to their country's growth and development. It is an act of patriotism, Mr. Deputy Speaker. If a Minister of National Security sees that he's unable to reduce crime, he's unable to break up gangs, he's unable to provide hope for lost inner city souls, he's unable to console parents whose sons and daughters are being murdered, it is a patriotic duty to resign. You don't have to be told what is going to be your legacy. In closing, Mr. Deputy Speaker, on the 14th June, the political leader, the member for Siparia, and myself attended the funeral of Eric Ganesh. There we witnessed a family and a community in St. Charles, in my constituency, in total distress, absolute distress. It was Eric Ganesh, 19 years old, St. Charles Village, Princestown, who played by the rules, went to school. He was a church member in a Pentecostal church over the road. He took Holy Communion, played by the rules, but killed because of the incompetence of this government. What could the opposition leader say to console the mother? You saw the mother touching the son, the only child, his hair, fixing his face, chasing away the flies, putting perfume. She was totally lost. What could we tell that community? Even the pastor was at loss for words. How could we comprehend the reasons for this murder? Eric Ganesh died because criminals know that they will kill and not be caught. That is the experience in Napoli. 14 murders and one detective. They know they could kill Ganesh and get away with it because we have an incompetent government in power. We cannot depend on this Minister of National Security and Government. I beg to move that the Prime Minister does the honorable thing, the patriotic thing, and remove this Minister of National Security and save the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. For heaven's sake, for God's sake, have some pride. Have some sense of how history will assess your stewardship. Do the honorable thing and resign forthwith. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I beg you.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I would like to second this motion moved by the member of Naprima, and I reserve my right to speak at a later date.
Honourable members, the motion being seconded, I shall now propose the question for debate. Be it resolved that this House express its lack of confidence in the Minister of National Security and call upon the Prime Minister to revoke his appointment forthwith. I recognize the member for Port of Spain, North St. Andrews.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, my fellow members, and most importantly, the audience of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, we rise here this afternoon after hearing a most impassioned and read speech from the member for Naparima, where he ended talking about patriotism. And perhaps that is the appropriate place to start. Because the civic-minded citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Deputy Speaker, understand quite well what patriotism is. They understand what it is that persons do to better Trinidad and Tobago. So using the opportunity and starting with the concept of patriotism and hearing it scream from the hills that they're patriotic, let's remind ourselves what the 41 of us here sit in Parliament to do on a weekly basis. We sit here to pass legislation because that is what is within our power. One of the tools to be utilized to fight crime is legislation. So if you're really serious and you're really patriotic, and you want to do what is right for Trinidad and Tobago, you would support legislation utilized to fight crime. I stand here to remind the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago what has taken place over the last 2+ years. FATF, FATCA, all of these important pieces of legislation that are to fight crime and white-collar crime, where there were serious implications for Trinidad and Tobago. Citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, remind yourselves, what did those on the other side do, including Naparima? They stood here in protest against legislation, took it down to the wire, and took Trinidad and Tobago to the brink. Anti-gang legislation. The police service are the ones who said this was a necessary tool to fight crime in Trinidad and Tobago. And as we heard Naparima quote the statistics of the growth of gangs in Trinidad and Tobago. Trinidad and Tobago, remind yourselves what those on the other side who are now mumbling, murmuring, and looking rather nervous did about anti-gang legislation. They blocked it 2 and 3 times in this parliament. That is not patriotic behavior. It is quite ironic, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that we stand here today to be given advice by those on the other side as they direct their attacks on a fine man, retired Major General Edmund Dillon for Point Fortin, whom we on this side stand fully behind as he takes on the scourge of crime. And let us remind ourselves what the advice that can come from the other side is. Change a Minister of National Security every few months. Because the people of Trinidad and Tobago will know that it takes a minister a minimum or around 9 months to get fully acclimatized, in control, and driving his or her ministry forward. What did they do to deal with national security issues and crime, which we're reaping the benefits for today? Sandy. After Sandy was Mr. Warner. After Mr. Warner was gone, Mr. Warner, we remember the cloud over Mr. Warner, their chosen Minister of National Security, chairman of the party. They're looking for him in the US, trying to extradite him for crimes committed in FIFA. That is Minister of National Security. After Warner, Emmanuel George. Poor Emmanuel George. Put him in, pull him out. After Emmanuel George, Gary Griffith. And why did Gary Griffith get moved from office? Because he told the truth. Gary Griffith, as a Minister of National Security, was removed from office because he stood up, told the truth, and is a witness against a former Attorney General who is now before the criminal courts for tampering with a witness. That is how you deal with crime, UNC style. And the last thing they do is they bring in Alfonso. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Silence.
Mr. Deputy Speaker. Oh yes, and there was a minister in the Ministry of National Security stumbling out the blocks, flicking on blue lights, refusing to breathe. Gone. Mohini as well. Gone. So those are the UNC Ministers of National Security. But you know what? A PNM government took no pride in seeing the crime levels skyrocket. What we would do is we'd stand up and do what is right for the people of Trinidad and Tobago and support legislation when we were in opposition. For example, the anti-crime bill, the anti-gang bill. So we reject their suggestions as to how to deal with national security. We reject their call for the Honorable Minister of National Security to be removed because your plan failed. And the country today is facing and reaping the benefits of your 6, 7, 8 ministers of failed national security, bar one who got fired because he squealed on your Attorney General. And let us leave that alone now. And let us now walk, thank you, we're now going to walk to a Commissioner of Police because everybody knows the constitutional body charged with the responsibility of protecting and serving the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago is not the government, is not the Minister of National Security, it's the Commissioner of Police. What did they do? What did they do? They brought in 2 foreigners. They brought in 2 foreigners, Gibbs and Iwatsky. And what did they do? They fired them midterm, pay them millions of dollars. But I want to remind the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago what they also did when Gibbs and Iwatsky were in Brazil. Gibbs and Iwatsky were in Brazil attending a conference, and they called a state of emergency.
That's right.
The commissioner of police, the police force did not know, and to this day don't know why they call that state of emergency. I heard them this week talk about there were a few police officers who suggested it. We know what happened with them too, right? So they got rid of the last permanent commissioner of police and deputy commissioner of police that this country has had. And their then attorney general is on record as saying, it's better to have him temporary. He go work hard, acting. He need to beg for his supper, etc. That is not how this government deals with crime. One of the first things this patriotic government did is amend the order to appoint a commissioner of police and to simplify it. What did they do? Run to court, challenge it, demolish certain parts of it, but we still pressed on. We did what we could have done. We took a decision not to appeal it, even though we thought it was wrong in law. Why? To allow the Police Service Commission to get on with their job of appointing a commissioner of police. And we saw in this parliament, just a few weeks ago, what it is, and interference that took place in that process of appointment of a commissioner of police. And we know that there were certain persons coaching people, persons who had advanced information, coaching people to get a certain person as a commissioner of police. We will not stand for that on this side. I heard him talking about guns, because we accept, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that the majority of heinous crimes today being committed against our citizens of Trinidad and Tobago that are really criminal related, not the crimes of passion, not the family disputes where they still use on occasions the cutlasses, the hammers, the knives, etc. We can't ban cutlasses, knives, and hammers. Those are crimes of passion, those are crimes of emotion, those are crimes where people have family disputes, etc. And they're most unfortunate. But again, this government doesn't politicize that the way those on the other side do. He stood here today in full glare of the public.
Member, again, I would like you to identify the member appropriately, please. The he and the him.
The member for Naparima stood here today and with a great sense of enthusiasm and pride dragged up some of these heinous crimes and crimes of passion. And the same children who today are suffering because they found their mother dead, it appears as a result of bludgeoning from a hammer. That is what they want to politicize. You saw the member for Naparima a short while ago, theatrics, pretending there's someone in a funeral and telling us about, that is not what you do if you're a true patriot. That is what you do when you're a politician politicizing crime. So let's talk about guns. Because no one in Trinidad that we know of manufactures guns. Guns come in via porous borders. They like to make fun now of porous borders. But let me remind the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Deputy Speaker, when the borders were porous, what was done about it, and what is most importantly being done about it now. So the government prior to 2010, Mr. Deputy Speaker, took a decision and bought 6 hostile fast patrol boats to patrol the borders as part of a tiered system to protect our border. There was a maintenance contract in place to keep these vessels afloat and to make sure these vessels were working properly. A contract to maintain those 6 fast patrol vessels by hostile. You know what happened? When the contract expired, they fire and run hostile. The boats deteriorated, and that is because they, on the other side, calling themselves falsely patriots, they are the ones who like to see things fall apart in Trinidad. They leave Alara Stadium unfinished. They did the same thing with the hostile vessels, and they give their friend, or his friend give his son, a contract to maintain the vessels. That is what happened. And today now, this government, an agency to maintain the MTU engines, this government has asked Hostal to come. They've completed. They're looking at the vessels. They're producing a report for us next week. And we will get those 6 patrol boats back on the waters in the Gulf of Paria to do what they have to do. They cancelled the OPVs. They don't like to hear about the cancellation of the OPVs. The OPVs were specifically built to patrol outside and keep the guns from coming in. The OPVs are now the pride of the Brazilian Navy. They are the pride of the Brazilian Navy now. We could have used those OPVs. They canceled them. But you know what? The helicopters that were supposed to come with the OPVs, they kept. And the country knows, as they saw the helicopter flying from north to south, every week, what they use the helicopters for. But what this country doesn't know, they also did with respect to the helicopters in Trinidad and Tobago. And we're currently investigating it now. The former administration entered into 2 contracts for 2 helicopters. Those helicopters have cost this country hundreds of thousands of US dollars on a monthly basis. 2 contracts entered into by the former administration, one using the National Helicopter Services, the other one using out of the office of the Prime Minister, signed by the former chairman of the National Security Council, approving it. Those 2 helicopters have never come to Trinidad. One has been parked up in a hangar in Delaware and the other way somewhere else in the United States. You know what we discovered? The contracts that they entered into had no termination clause. So pay hundreds of thousands of US dollars every month for helicopters there. So then when we asked, well, why don't we repair them and bring them? They say, you can't. Because the persons that they entered into for those contracts brought them from Scandinavia without the logs as to all of the work done on the helicopters. So to this day, since under that administration, another contract where hundreds of thousands of US dollars have been paid every month. So we're now running in tens of millions of US dollars. We've never been able to utilize even the seat belt, at least on this side. Some might have gone on that side and sat down and put on a seat belt. We have never seen those helicopters. What did we do? As soon as we found out, we canceled the contract. We're fighting them in the courts of the United States now because that is what patriotism is about. Talking about legislation again, the Attorney General yesterday led a charge to try and speed up the judicial process, the criminal judicial process in Trinidad and Tobago, and make a specific court to deal with specific charges. We heard a frontline UNC senator stand up and tell everybody about the toilets, about the air condition, about how the Hall of Justice falling apart. That didn't start yesterday. That has been an ongoing problem. And the question we asked, when there was money in the Treasury and the $16 billion in NGC, why you didn't give the judiciary the money to fix the helicopter, to fix the air condition? I'll tell you why. They gave SIS the money to build...
48-1, Deputy Speaker, irrelevant.
Overruled.
Relevance, the relevance is crime. You committed crimes against the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. That is irrelevance. So what you did is you gave contracts.
One person on the legs, please. 1 person on the legs.
48-6, Deputy Speaker. The member for Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West is imputing improper motives against us as an opposition.
Overruled.
Thank you very much. Make it up. Let me tell you where you could go and look when you're speaking to Mamu. I will say it outside. PSAEL. PSAEL, they gave NGC, they told NGC enter into contracts with PSAEL to build recreation grounds for $12 million plus that only cost $2 million. That is a crime against the people of Trinidad and Tobago.
This is not about that motion. The motion is about it.
Member for Pointe-a-Pierre, I have already ruled. Overruled.
You know what what the member for Naparima also spoke about that I found quite hilarious? He spoke about walking. He said when you walk here and you walk there and you walk. Yesterday, in the middle of meetings, my phone started to burn up. Constituents in Port of Spain, North St. Anne's West in Belmont, sending me pictures of a deputy leader from the UNC walking in Belmont. If you see the outfit, Gucci boots. She wearing Gucci boots costing $1,500 US. That is a crime too.
How that is?
Gucci boots is a crime?
Listen, listen, member for Point of Pierre, there's a procedure, say it accordingly.
Not Gucci boots has nothing to do with the motion. The motion is against the member for Point Porter.
Member, rephrase, retract accordingly.
We were talking about walking. I'm talking about crime committed, Mr.
Silence,
Deputy
other members.
Speaker. Crime committed against the Treasury to be able to afford $1,500 Gucci boots and go and walk in Belmont. They talk.
Again, that is not a crime to walk with a boots in Trinidad. That has nothing to do with...
Silence. Member, I would suggest you move on. Go to your other point.
I will leave the Gucci boots behind. Another point about patriotism, as they get excited on the other side. Doppy, who is on the other side, gets excited. Another point, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Another point, Mr. Deputy Speaker, about patriotism.
Members, hold on. Okay. Members. Okay. We are in the second. Member for Siparia, what is 1 second, please? Just 1 second. Right, we are in the second member of the day for the motion. All right. I would have given the mover of the motion certain leeway as the mover of the motion to proceed. I would like to listen to the discourse of all members during this particular motion. And as the speaker, I will rule accordingly. There's a procedure to follow based on the standing orders. Both sides know the procedure. Chief Whip, Leader of the House, act accordingly, and I will rule accordingly. Right now, I'm recognizing the member that is on his legs, and we shall proceed. Kindly.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. We were talking about guns and illegal firearms, and we were also talking about walking and Gucci boots, and we were also talking about detection of crime. One of the ways you effectively detect crime and then move it from intelligence to evidence for prosecution of crime is by a proper intelligence agency. Let me remind the population how those on the other side dealt with intelligence under their time. There was an organization that was in charge of intercept and intelligence gathering. At the time, it was called the SIA, I believe, correct? The Security Intelligence Agency. Now, let us remind the country, by those who want to give advice today on how to deal with crime, how they dealt with crime. They fired who was there before, create a whole big gray cloud that didn't exist. Because how do you deal with gathering of intelligence? One of the things you might have to do is interact with covert intelligence operatives. You may have to pay persons for intelligence, etc., whilst you're working intelligence and getting into crime. They stormed in to the SIA, say, look, we found cash. Well, obviously you're going to find cash because they had to pay the CIs in cash. We find guns. Obviously they have guns. They have to defend themselves on the street. So what do? We put the receptionist to run it. That is what they did. Rishmi Ramnarayan ran SIA for them until it was discovered. That's how they dealt with crime. That's how they dealt with intelligence. What have we done? We've come back in. One of the first things we did is we made sure that the SSA is getting resources again. They're doing their job. And in fact, a lot of the detection taking place now is not only the SSA, but is also the technology being given to the police. When we came in, and I've said this before here, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and I'll say it again. When we came in, the first thing they ran to us and told us is they dismantled the facial recognition system. They dismantled all of the servers for the intelligence. They canceled the OPV. They told us that the helicopter that was supposed to be used at Camp Kamuto for the special forces to do their job, they dismantled, they put in a wet bar, they put in a television, and God alone knows what it was being used to do. So the methodology and the assets to be used were not being used. But now under this administration, they are being used. I hear chopper. Another thing we came in, we met, were exorbitant contracts for the maintenance of the helicopters. Immediately we set about ensuring that Trinidad and Tobago got value for money. And we actually had to ground the helicopters. But some of the other things being done, Mr. Deputy Speaker, by this administration under the leadership of the Honourable Member for Point 14 is rebuilding the intelligence service. And that is happening. And we are seeing now the results. Again, I saw another member across there call a press conference this week. A month has gone since anti-gang legislation. Not a single arrest. Not true. There have been arrests of alleged gang leaders. There haven't been charges under the anti-gang legislation. But again, to build a successful case, one has to gather sufficient evidence and do it properly. And as the Attorney General says, he suspects that very soon charges will come. The next thing that we did as an administration under the leadership of the Prime Minister, one of the first things he did was set up a very small, he populated a very small National Security Council. And that National Security Council works very hard along with the heads, the divisional heads, and the leadership of law enforcement. Because you know what we met when we came in? 3/4 of the cabinet on that side, sitting on the National Security Council. No meetings being held, vice decisions being taken. When we ask, well, where's the minute for this decision? Where's the minute for that? They don't exist. Helicopter in place. They talked about $500 million being spent on the NOC. What they did with it? Another thing they were famous for doing, they want to talk about vessels. Gone off on a trip to China, taking a walk on a dock, see a boat and say, I want one. Where's the procurement process in that? That is what they did to fight crime. And you know what is worse, Mr. Deputy Speaker? They saddled the taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago and all these initiatives, including the $500 million they spent on billing an NOC, with no financing in place whatsoever. They were just spending money that didn't exist from the Treasury, so whoever came in next had to take that up. That is a crime in itself. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is quite ironic. It is quite ironic to stand here today and hear the discussion taking place, and the screaming and the shouting and the hysterics and the bending down pretending they're at a funeral and calling themselves patriots. They are not patriots. They are not patriots because the record will show, the Hansard will reflect the number of recording of who voted for what, and history will reflect that they don't support the legislation that is being utilized to fight crime. They don't want to support anything. And anything positive taking place in national security, look at the jokes he's making. They vex about Gucci boots, but he was the member for Naparima was the one talking about walking. Yes, the member for Lavantil West and the Minister of National Security went and they walked in the member for Lavantil West's constituency to see what was happening and to go down on the ground and to tell the law-abiding citizens that they're going to do what needs to be done.
Silence.
And that is not something to be laughed at. Every constituent out there will tell you they like when their MP walks and comes to find out what is going on. So that is something that we on this side actually commend. The honourable member for Point 14 works tirelessly. He works tirelessly calling in the heads, asking them what to do, giving them instructions from a policy decision. He is constantly working with the law enforcement and the TTDF and the SSA and the other units. They talk about the terror threat. And I've heard them say in the most frivolous way things about the terror threat that took place over the carnival period. And they make a joke out of it. They try to politicize it. They even try to bring religion into it. I stand up here today, Mr. Deputy Speaker, with the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago looking on and give them the assurance that there was absolutely nothing false about that terror threat. That terror threat was brought to us as a result of the rebuilding of relationships, international relationships that had been retracted. When we first came in, we were told that there was a refusal to sit with some on the other side because they did not know where they would stand in getting the job done. We worked hard with all of our international law enforcement partners. We gave them not only the reassurance, but over time rebuilt the relationships that allowed us to get the intelligence from the international agencies that alerted us to pass on to our intelligence services and our law enforcement services. And as a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, I think today we should applaud all those who worked over the carnival period for averting a very real threat. And the irony in situations of terrorism is you will never be thanked for getting rid or averting and preventing what could have happened. But we will not sleep on this side under the leadership of the member for Point 14. We will continue to do what needs to be done despite the noise from other quarters in the society to make sure that citizens can sleep safely at night and avoid terror threats and to avoid the disaster. Because every country, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that we traveled to in the world recently, sitting in London with the MI6, SO15 and these bodies, sitting in Australia with New South Wales Police, the Ministries of Justice, you know what they told us? And the same thing in Washington. They said the only time that the legislators became serious about dealing with terrorism is after a massive disaster. 9/11, 7/7 in Australia. The irony of when we were meeting, 7/7 in England, sorry. The irony of when we were meeting in Australia, right outside the building, around the corner was the Lint Cafe, where a lone wolf for ISIS took lives. This government will not sleep. We will not rest on our laurels. We will work with international partners, and despite whatever false criticism there is out there, under the leadership of the member for Point 14, we will take on terrorism frontally. The Attorney General is bringing the legislation. He is doing what needs to be done at the advice of our international partners. And we will do it, and we will get it right, and we will fight the crime and do what we can to do it. Because that is what true patriotism is about. It's not about just making noise and actually taking delight. You actually see on their faces delight, as we just saw from the member of Naparima, in expressing the tragedy of the most heinous murders in society. That is patriotism. The people of Trinidad and Tobago judge them by what is going on, and it's still going on about the boots. They say the boots not relevant, but it is interesting that Oropuch East is talking about the boots. Because that person worked under Oropuch East, so one wonders how they could afford the boots. Right? And whether the boots come from a mall in Holland. So he says, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we stand here on this side and we say, and we hear all of the noise being made about the initiatives being taken by the government to fight crime. Another thing that was done, the first thing they did is sell the blimps. Every law enforcement officer and intelligence officer will tell you the yeoman service those blimps did for Trinidad and Tobago in terms of hovering and gathering intelligence on the ground. They got rid of it. The radar system, they allowed to deteriorate. It seems that every single piece of crime-fighting equipment they did nothing about. But in the last few months before an election, they ran off. They buy some boats from Dillon. They buy a boat from China. And you know, as I just said, Mr. Deputy Speaker, no money in place to pay for those boats. But they like to say...
Remember, your initial 30 minutes has expired. You have an additional 15. You care to avail yourself? Proceed.
So as I was saying, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that was not real crime fighting. So we will take no advice from our friends. We will take their assistance graciously when they want to assist with legislation. The Prime Minister has led his team on times to meet with the leader of the opposition to talk about crime. They've met together to talk about crime and initiatives. That is something that is patriotic. That is what the people of Trinidad and Tobago want to see. Because at the end of the day, the truth is, after all of the politics, Mr. Deputy Speaker, crime affects everyone regardless of race, regardless of religion, regardless of your creed, where you live, where you come from, etc. And this administration will continue to do all that it can under the leadership of the member for Point 14 to take on that fight against crime. And we will do it seriously. And he's done his job very quietly. He's not bombastic. He doesn't walk around with a large entourage and make a lot of noise. He sits down very quietly and he does his job. And he does his job well and with the support of the National Security Council and the Honorable Prime Minister. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we reject without hesitation this motion and the audacity of bringing this motion to the House here today. We reject it outright. All of those on the other side, and I suspect if they raise the whip, some of those on the other side, including Oropuch East, would vote against the motion. So on behalf of those constituents in Belmont, who flooded my phone with the photos, I say, don't worry, Belmont. Don't worry, Belmont East. Let your hearts not be troubled. Because very soon, the two that they send into Belmont East will be gone, never to be seen again. Gucci boots and all.
Is that a threat? It's a promise.
It's a prophecy. It's a prophecy that you will lose the by-elections in Belmont. What do you want about?
Members. All right, both sides.
You must continue to speak or not. He cannot threaten our members.
Okay, members. Member for Siparia, you are experienced enough and you know the procedure. Your chief whip is next to you. Again, there's the standing orders. Let's do it appropriately. And rest assured, the speaker will recognize. Do you have, would you like to raise on Mr. Siparia, on a standing order? Right? And members, please. Members, please. Members, the Gucci boots. It's happening on both sides. You all are encouraging the Gucci boots on both sides. So deal with it appropriately so that I can rule. Right? Proceed.
Just to clarify the record, because this is a typical type of distraction and a typical type of trying to mislead the population. I at no point in time threatened anyone. I have not threatened anyone wearing Gucci boots or otherwise. All I was saying is that there's a by-election taking place in Belmont East, and as a member of Parliament for Port of Spain, North St. Anne's West, where Belmont East falls under, I am assuring the party that I represent that very soon they will have a P&M councillor back in place, and those who walk there with Gucci boots will not come there to try and pretend that they care for them anymore. And I'm reminded, Tobago feels the same way. They come in there, they throw money around, they try to do all sorts of things. They lose, and they're not to be seen again. That is all it is. So for the member of Siparia to jump up with all of the theatrics about threatening, I don't threaten anyone. I don't have to threaten Gucci boots. She's not on the radar apart from cases in court. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, on behalf of my colleagues on this side, and starting for the colleagues on this side, we stand in full support of the member for Point 14 and reject outright this spurious motion, and we will take absolutely no advice from those who failed between 2010 and 2015 in national security as well, and they're threatening. They want to talk about threats. They are now threatening, Oropuch East is now threatening to withdraw and to refrain from supporting any legislation going forward to deal with crimes. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the citizens will judge, the citizens will decide who's patriotic and who's not patriotic. But we support the member for Point 14 as the Minister of National Security.
I recognize the member for Siparia.
Serious talk now. Give it some kickers. Not bacchanal talk. Serious talk. Teach them.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Some of us in here seem to have forgotten that we are dealing with a very, very serious matter. You know, I walked to come to the Parliament today and I saw people there outside. I walked to come. I saw people outside the Parliament today. I know some of them. I don't know some of them. And they came to express their pain and their fear with respect to the level of crime in this country. And one woman, one mother, she said, MP, 3 of my children have been murdered at different points in time. 3 children, not 1, you know. And yet you come here to talk about Gucci boots. You don't care. Gucci boots. Gucci boots, and apparently the member for Port of Spain, North St. Anne's West doesn't even know what is a real Gucci boots. But he so wants to make a big joke and a distraction. And he talks about distractions when what he's done here was to completely try to distract from the state of affairs of Trinidad and Tobago. Because he comes in here, Mr. Deputy Speaker, he's like a big bad wolf. He's huffing, he's puffing. The member for Port of Spain, North St. Anne's West, huffing and puffing, moaning and complaining, weeping and wailing, gnashing his teeth here in this Parliament today. And then goes back. They are like in a time warp. They are caught in a time warp in a rearview mirror. So everything they campaigned on in 2015, we are now in 2018, you're coming to talk about OPV, you're coming to talk about what? Good, what is it? Helicopters, Reshmi. Okay, fine, that's why you are there. And having been there for almost 3 years, going 2 years and 9 months, if all that was wrong, what have you done to fix it? You moan and groan about the OPV. Well, why didn't you in 2 years you want OPV? Why didn't you get the OPV? Why are you going back down to Australia? Why are you going down to Australia? To pick up again hostile, the same hostile boats sitting. Sitting. You talk about Reshmi Ramnarayan, who didn't last 1 day in the Ministry of National Security. Not 1 day. You come back, blame Kamla, blame the partnership, blame the government that was there, but you did that. And having done that, you are sitting on that side, and we are here. And now that you are in charge, take charge, wake up and take charge. Wake up and take charge.
Solve crime.
And when they go outside...
1 second. Members, we know the procedure. Yes, the thumping of the desk, but there are some outbursts that are taking place. No problem with the thumping of the desk, but the outburst that goes with it. Please, Siparia.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And so, 2 years, 9 months later, what have you done? You accuse us when we were in government of all manner of things, some of which I will not have the documents right now, but we will answer a lot of those allegations being made many times which are untrue. And we cannot immediately bring up the document now talking. Okay, so fine. We take blame for all of that. We take blame. We apologize for whatever wrongdoing we may have done. But you are there 2 years and 9 months. What are you doing to solve the crime today? And we did all of that, you say, and we fired whoever, commissioner of police, and the true one, and the substantive, and never put back one. We did all of that, yes. And guess what? We brought crime, serious crimes down to the lowest in 3 decades. Lowest in 3 decades. So we take blame for that, for bringing crime down. We constructed over 8 Police stations, how many have you constructed? None. All you're doing is turning the key, opening the door on police stations that we built. And you're continuing cutting ribbon everywhere. So we'll take the blame, I say. But I want you to squarely take blame for the state of crime in our country today. Take it. It has escalated. My colleague here from Naparima gave the numbers. We have the highest number of murders ever recorded for any 1 month in January of this year. We have amongst the highest numbers of murders since you came into office, climbing over 1,300 murders, man. And you want to come here and talk about Gucci boots and laugh and grin, make a joke of the entire thing when there are people in this country are suffering. Yes. There are people, do you know what it is to talk to a mother who has lost her only child? Do you know the pain of a family? Theatrics to you because you don't care. You don't care. You just don't care. And I would have thought you would come today, and tell us, well, look, this is what we did. This is what we are trying to do. Not go back in that review mirror for when we were there. When we were there, I am being totally disturbed by the member for Portishead, Deputy Speaker. He had his turn. I did not shout at him there.
Members, each member will have their time to join the debate accordingly. I'm recognizing the member for Separia. And again, address the chair. And please, the outbursts and the crosstalks, minimize. Proceed.
So I thank you, and I stand in total support of the motion brought by my colleague, the member for Naparima, that this House expresses its lack of confidence in the Minister of National Security and call upon the Prime Minister to revoke his appointment forthwith. As I said, it's a very serious matter, and this is the levels of crime rising. It's happening at the same time when jobs are under stress, jobs are being lost. And we are of the view, I am of the firm view, that this particular Minister of National Security has failed to do his job to protect the people of Trinidad and Tobago. The member for Point 14 has spent nearly 3 years as the minister, and during that time, these are some of the headlines. These are some of the headlines. Dancing Dillon. Dillon dodging. I'm quoting from the newspapers. No dent in crime under Dillon. More deaths under Dillon. And the performance of this particular minister, he's a good person, you know, but it's his performance and his competence in fighting crime. It has been a disastrous performance. And I said it before, it is time to wake up, to take charge, to start leading, because the country is disintegrating. And when the public outcry comes, what happens? The leader of that party sends out the minister and others to go to hotspots and walk. As my colleague has already pointed out, instead of the murders going down, they went up. Madam, Mr. Deputy Speaker, this country deserves a proper governance. They deserve to have a government in place which will take its mandate with respect to safety and security as a priority. The first duty of any government is to protect its citizens. That's the first duty. And this government, under this Minister of National Security, has failed to take care of its citizens. It is time then to really look at what these numbers are telling us, and I want to congratulate my colleague from Naparima for giving us all this statistics in a thoroughly, well-researched presentation here today. So I'm saying the primary obligation of any government, protect our citizens. That is so important that when you go to the first guarantee under our Constitution to citizens, that first guarantee under a democracy such as ours is to deal with safety and security. And this Minister of National Security is a reporting and is a line minister for the TTPS, for the Coast Guard, for the Defence Force, for the Air Guard, and also for the prison service. The minister is responsible for the protection, safety, and security of Trinidad and Tobago. And then we have a government minister and the person of Portishead North, St. Anne's West come to tell us they're not in charge as a TTPS. How many times will you continue to blame the police service? How many times? How many times don't you understand that you will give the policy direction, the police will implement, but you have to give the policy direction, you have to give the plan, you are in charge. We had the same TTPS, the same Coast Guard, the same prison service, the same defense force, and I repeat, this under the same units under the TTPS. We were under Commissioner of Police. We were able to bring the serious crimes down to the lowest in 31 years. So what has changed? What has changed? What has changed is that you are now in charge of PNM is in government. That is what has changed. It's not the police has changed, the defense force, the Coast Guard, the prison service. No, no, no. It is those who are in the administration and those in charge who are failing and abdicating the responsibility to do exactly what they were elected to do. And so we need go no further to see what is the role of the ministry and the minister. On their very own website, they tell us this, that their mission is to create an environment which ensures public safety and security through the maintenance of law and order and the commitment of all available resources to the protection of life and property. Is that happening? Is this Minister of National Security and his ministry ensuring public safety and security through maintaining law and order? The answer is no. Roles and functions are to the website. Maintenance of law and order, public safety, and defense against aggression. Is that happening? The answer is no. Coordination of disaster preparedness and emergency relief. Wow, a rainy season back again. That has not happened, and I very much fear that that is going to happen coming in the new rainy season soon. So when we read the mission statement, the roles and functions and so on of the Minister of National Security, when we understand what we have had to endure over the past 2 years and the 9 months, the fear that we live under, it is clear why this motion should succeed and this minister should be taken out of office. It is a mission, as I read from the website, of the minister to create an environment for public safety in the villages, in the towns, wherever it may be. That is the primary function. But what did we see? Instead, we've seen a breakdown in law and order. Under this minister, the criminal element have prospered. They have found refuge, as has always happened when the PNM is in power. Under this minister, respect for human life and the value of human life has hit an all-time low. Under this minister, the criminal element has become more brazen and brutish in the attacks upon citizens. You know, and I heard a member for Bordespain North speaking about terror threats and so on. Nothing did he say about home invasions, which have increased. Nothing. That's what the ordinary citizen is living under. Minister was saying nothing have been kidnapping again, which are on the increase. But you see, he probably doesn't care because he could probably afford to pay ransoms. Which ordinary people can't do. He talked nothing about throats. You know,
silence.
Words.
Members,
words
listen. Members, member for Siparia, member for Siparia, member for Siparia, member for Port of Spain, North, St. Anne's, West. You had your time, and I'm not going to tolerate the crosstalk with regards to the discourse, and also member for Siparia, address the chair, and you will have my protection. Proceed.
So Port of Spain, North, St. Anne's, West.
No, please. I ruled. No, listen, members, member for Laventil West, member for Naparima, I'm recognizing Siparia. Proceed.
I thank you very much, sir. I'm saying the member had nothing to say about the home invasions, which is now a cause for grave concern throughout the country. Nothing about throats being sliced from ear to ear, which is happening in our country. Nothing about robberies resulting in stab wounds, throats sitting, killings at home. Nothing of the sort being told to us. And just as we are here, well, even whilst we are here today, a story is put out here on the Trinidad Express. In the middle of the day, on one of the busiest streets in the country, someone walked into a lawyer's office and slit the throat of the secretary in that office. That has just happened today, whilst we are here skinning and grinning about Gucci boots, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The body of Nicole Davidine was discovered around 11 a.m. It happened in a building at Ramsaran Street, Chaguanas, not far from the courthouse and police station. Davidine lived at California Village, Cuba, and worked for a particular attorney at law. This is hot off the press from today's Express, Mr. Deputy Speaker. So these are the things that are happening. I really would appreciate, instead of the mudslinging and about bottles and who's smoking weed and who not smoking weed, all these things, you know, tell us what you plan to do.
Remember,
tell us
just
what
the
you've
chair
done
still.
in order to deal with crime. We've seen under this Minister of National Security, morale of the members of law enforcement has hit an all-time low. More members of law enforcement, Mr. Deputy Speaker, more members of law enforcement have been killed by the criminal element under this administration as compared to under any other administration in Trinidad and Tobago. We had agreed as a cabinet that we would give a $1 million grant to families of deceased police officers, law enforcement officers who were killed in duty. When we raised questions about it, the other side said they had to bring legislation. Well, 3 years later, 2 years and 9 months later, there is no legislation. So whilst there would be provisions, you give to some, you give to others, there is no uniform process for it. There are many families out there who still have not received it. And the government now, 2 years, 9 months later, what excuse do you have? Under this Minister of National Security, homes have been turned into prisons. You're barricaded in your own homes. Business places have been turned into hunting grounds. Our communities have been transformed into killing fields. And what are you doing about it? Blame us. We did this with choppers. We did with boat. We did so and so and so. Yeah. That sounds all good. Blame me. I said I'll take the blame for whatever wrongdoing, but I am not taking blame for the increase in crime and the suffering that's taking place right now. And then Port of Spain North sent answers again. So you know what? Well, you all did certain things with the money. You spent out the money and you give out contracts and all these things, you know. So we don't have the money. But this is one ministry and one minister who cannot complain about lack of resources. This is one minister. Because over the past 2 years and 9 months, the Minister of National Security has been allocated more than $24 billion. What? $24 billion. So don't come to say the money isn't there, because this is one ministry can make no complaint about lack of money, lack of resources. $24 billion allocated to the Ministry of National Security under your government. And what does the country have to show for this $24 billion? What? 2 years, 9 months later. Under this Minister of National Security, close to 1,400 or over 1,300, but close to 14 citizens have been murdered. Over the past 2 years, we have lost more than 50 of our women to crimes. More children have been murdered under this government than under any other administration in the history of our country. 6 months ago, we were mourning the death of Joshua Andrews. Today, we are mourning the death of Joshua James. In a few days' time, we will be the 1 year anniversary of the slaying, the slaughter of young Videj Subha. It is so palpable, the pain and the grief of the deaths of our children, sons and daughters of our soil. If you could only understand the heartache of these families, Mr. Deputy Speaker, it will be no laughing matter here. Instead, the government will be telling us, we will do this, we have done this. But they have nothing to show. 2 years, 9 months later, the government cannot point to anything. Because you see, PNM to them means people never matter. People never matter. People never matter. Under this Minister of National Security, sons and daughters have been facing once again the scourge of kidnapping. Kidnappers have once again invaded homes, business places. Today we should remember Ria Sukdev, Mr. Deputy Speaker, you may remember, whose father, up to today, is waiting for her to return home. We should remember Kirby Mohammed, who up to today's mother still awaits, to see that child, her son, walk through the door. Do you ever take time to sit and comprehend and understand? Under this Minister of National Security, there have been more children sexually assaulted. Our children have become targets and playthings of criminal elements. More children have gone missing. My colleague gave the stats and we wanted to share with you after. More children have gone missing and are never to be heard of under this minister than at any other time. There have been more home invasions under this minister. More women have been under attack, more businessmen and women and business places raided, robbed, invaded. Under this minister, the number of criminal gangs and gang members have hit an all-time high. And yes, the Honourable Member San Fernando West wants to know where those stats are from. I can tell you, go straight to your contribution in this Parliament on the anti-gang law. And in the sister island, under this government, Tobago has experienced an unprecedented level of really lawlessness and viciousness by the criminal element. And so I want to remember and recall to this honourable chamber, it was the member for Diego Martin West, when in opposition, said, he told the whole country, that a government that could not, and I'm quoting, that a government who could not deal with the crime problem was part of the problem, and that such an administration has lost the legitimacy to govern the country. I repeat those words today for the member of Diego Martin West. By his own words, the Prime Minister and the Minister should really tender their resignations, both of them, for the elections. And so we come to the motion of no confidence. And I want to really remind, my colleague touched on it, but I think I want to remind ourselves and the national community of the failed so-called crime plan of the other side, because they put forward nothing else. Before the election of 2015, 10-point crime plan. They transferred that 10-point crime plan into their manifesto. And then budget after budget, the 10-point crime plan has come forward. And now, let's look at this 10-point crime plan. One, appoint a commissioner of police. Before elections, first said it, manifesto, and then budget presentations. 2 years and 9 months, the country is still awaiting the appointment of a commissioner of police. And the member again for Port of Spain, North, St. Anne's, West said, we blocked it and we took it to court. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I give the assurance that we will always take what we believe to be illegal to a court of law for a determination. And we succeeded. The government was engaged in an illegal and unconstitutional process to appoint a commissioner of police. That was struck down, parts of it, by the High Court. The member says they didn't appeal it because they didn't appeal it, because they did not appeal it. Because they accepted that they were wrong and accepted the decision of the High Court. When that constitutional process now, after the parts were struck out, when that was brought here to the Parliament, right here to this Parliament, which resulted in a candidate that they did not approve of, they used their majority in the Parliament to scrap the process. So after 2 years and 9 months, they are no further to having a Commissioner of Police, a promise that they made before elections, during elections, and after. The second promise was with respect to the manpower audit. 2 years and 9 months, this process was completed, the audit was done, but there has not been implementation of a single recommendation from that manpower audit. 10-point crime plan number 3. Municipal police, activate laws to establish municipal police in all 14 local government bodies under THA. This, I think we have 3. I think we have 3.
Silence, members.
2 years, 9 months later, this was not only promised in the 10-point plan, it was highlighted as a part of the crime fighting initiatives 2015 budget package, 2016, 2017. We are yet, this is yet to see the light of it. It's like Galleon's passage, you know. It's coming, it's coming. But you can't reach, you don't see it. 2 years and 9 months later. Crime, out of the, item 4 in the 10-point crime plan, Police Complaints Authority. Amend the existing legislation to give greater powers to the PCA, including the powers to independently prosecute police officers. Not even an attempt has been made, Mr. Deputy Speaker, to bring this piece of legislation in Parliament to achieve reform of the Police Complaints Authority. For this alone, and the other 3 broken promises, should resign. 5, promise parliamentary oversight. Establish a joint select committee of the Parliament, crime suppression and security. Well, yes, that JSC has been established, but it is being chaired by none other than a member of the executive of the government. And when we met, what has been noted again said, we as the Prime Minister and the opposition leader, we met, which is good and patriotic and so on, but the promise never materialized. And the member of the government still sits on that JSC. 6 in the crime 10 point, witness tampering offence. Spoke about again, you know, if they don't call the name of Anand Ramlogan in his parliament, they would not. The former AG, if they call the former AG, they will not have a happy evening at all. But here, 6 in the plan that they had put forward, witness tampering. Amend the present laws to create a specific offence of witness tampering. 2 years and 9 months later, not one line has come to the Parliament on this aspect. So when my colleague Naparima spoke of legislation and so on, response from Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West, talked about we would not support legislation, we didn't do certain things. But these are the things that you promised. And almost going on 3 years, they have failed to materialize. 7, the Prime Minister called me when I was then Prime Minister. He has to see me very urgently. Urgently. I said, okay, come across to the diplomatic center. And we met one evening. And he talked to me about people invading people's homes. That there were people going into people's homes. And we must do something. We must do something about it. We must create an offense of unlawful eviction. We must create unlawful eviction offense. And this is one of the things they had promised. So we didn't do it, okay. But you're in charge. You have 2 years, 9 months. After 2 years and 9 months, the government has realized a lack of wisdom in this measure, and again, another broken promise in their plan. Nothing has happened with respect to that. 8, anti-gang legislation. Review the anti-gang legislation to ensure its usage is more effective. The government eventually got the support of the opposition. Legislation was passed and proclaimed, and well, up to today, we are told some people have been arrested. The AG is saying sort of that they might be charged soon. We wait again like the Gallant's factions. We know it when we see it. Well, I think his colleagues were very kind. Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West said they expect to have some charges soon. 9, urban renewal plan. Return to a sustained implementation of the urban renewal plan for East Port of Spain, subscribing to the recommendations of the Ryan report. Again, this is another promise that has failed to materialize. And 10, acceptance of the Caribbean Court of Justice as our final court of appeal, and nothing has been done. So this entire 10-point crime plan, repeat, failed. Promises never materialized. Nothing to do. After 2 years and 9 months, nothing more than misrepresentations, broken promises, and, of course, dismal failure. And the crime numbers continue to increase. My colleague spoke about the... Oh, should I have, please?
2 minutes, 30 minutes, so we have an extra 15 minutes.
Okay, thank you. So we sit in this house today, close to, as I said, 2 years, 9 months. We've seen the murder rate increase rapidly, as Naparima has shared with us. I will not go through the numbers. The statistics speak to themselves. Crime, murders continue to soar under the government, under this Minister of National Security. One economist predicts that Trinidad and Tobago may have the highest murder rate in history this year if the current crime rate is not, if it continues, is not brought down. In an article in Loop TT, Crime Analysis, headline, TT on track for highest murder rate in history. This was in June 7, 2018. And the article talks about the projections given what has happened so far, maybe 269, 270 murders to date in just this year, and the projection is for it to be the highest in the country. What is the government going to do with that kind of projection? Are they going to say the person who said that and the person predicting are they a UNC? Is that going to be the answer, than to blame the messenger rather than listen to the message? And it was not Roger Hussein, madam, by the way. You can check the Loop article.
Here, do tell her.
June 7, 20, I don't want to impugn their name here as being UNC, because it's not a UNC. 7 June 2018. Crime analysis, TT on track for highest murder rate in history. Approximately 550 people murdered in 2008, that was the highest number ever. While in 494. As of today, the murder toll stands at about, what was it, we said 269.70. On June 7th, it was 263. And compared with the same period last year, it was 240. So already, when this was being done, you had an increase year on year from the previous year. The fact is, to date, more murders for every full year in office than in our term in office for each full year. A 2015 article by a gentleman who, to the best of my knowledge, is not a UNC, Kevin Baldusing, asks. Yes, please.
Your initial 30 minutes has expired. You have an additional 15. You care to avail yourself?
Yes, please.
Proceed.
Just write it down. Okay, so Kevin Baldusing, and I'm quoting, if you allow me to read from it. Does crime go up when the PNM is in office? And the headline is Spike in Murders After September 7, Sunday, September 27, 2015, Trinidad Guardian. I quote, in the days right after the September 7 general election, homicide rates spiked in both Trinidad and Tobago. Within the subsequent fortnight, more than 20 people were murdered, causing the 2015 homicide total to surpass last year's for the first time. It continues, the last PNM government's record on crime fighting was abject. Under the Patrick Manning administration, from 2001 to 2010, homicides went up by 300%, with then National Security Minister Martin Joseph, now the late Martin Joseph, now deceased, then Minister, promising every year that the measures government had put in place would soon bear fruit. Of course, that never happened. So in 1991, party came into power, PNM, 2000 UNC 120. 2001 UNC 151. 2002 PNM 171. These are the statistics. And my colleague had quoted for the years since 2010 to 2015 as we move along. So what we see in the same article from Kevin Baldusing is that the government continues, as it did then and as they're doing now, promising they'll put measures in place that will bear fruit, but that's not happening. The situation is just getting worse. There is no interest on the part of government, it appears, to deal with crime. I want to quote from an Express editorial dated May 20, 2018, just recently, titled Crime SOS. And that editorial noted, and I quote with your leave, please, sir, to read this. Criminals have become confident in their power to do as they like without facing consequences. Today, the message of crime without punishment has the country firmly in its grip. No place is safe from the random violence that has infiltrated every nook and cranny. When temples and churches are seen as easy prey, then it is time to recognize that every boundary of security has been reached. Every boundary of security has been reached. I ask again, I say, this is a serious indictment on the performance of the Minister of National Security. And whilst we have to look at competence, there are other reasons why we feel, and I will share, to point to the failure of this Minister of National Security and to note that the Minister is completely ill-suited for this particular job. In November 2015, according to Trinidad Express, the Minister declared that ISIS is not a threat to Trinidad and Tobago.
Serious?
ISIS is not a threat to Trinidad and Tobago, in the Asha Javed Trinidad Express, 13 November 2015.
He said that.
Asha Javed, in an article in the Trinidad Express of 13 November 2015, where the minister is quoted as saying, ISIS is not a threat to Trinidad and Tobago. This serious faux pas forced the Prime Minister to respond to the public condemnation of his Minister of National Security, the blunder, by affirming that the rest of the country already knew that Trinidad and Tobago was more vulnerable to the threat of terrorism than ever before. Now, we could have perhaps put down the minister's statement as being recently come into the job from September. He made the statement in November, and we could put it down to newness. But, 2 years later, again, speaking, it seems, out of turn, oblivious to what was going on in the country, the minister said, Carnival 27, he said, was crime-free. Crime-free. 7 murders recorded over the Carnival weekend 2017, attacks on 2 police officers, a number of shootings and stabbings. This Minister of National Security puts out a press release on Ash Wednesday to say that Carnival 2017 was crime-free. Following questions from the media, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the bewildered minister was forced to admit the press release that was done in error. It couldn't be a crime-free carnival. And so we come to another series of episodes with respect to the sea dress fishermen, where again, the Honourable Minister did not appear to know what was happening, when it was happening, and seemed to be totally in the dark as to what was going on with those sea dress fishermen. When the anti-gang legislation was filed in December of last year, Prime Minister declared many more will die. And it's perhaps one of the few things that he got right. We are not prepared to allow more to die under this Minister of National Security. We are not prepared to lose more of our children, our sons or daughters, brothers and sisters, wives, husbands, mothers, fathers. Therefore, that is why we felt that since the Prime Minister will not take action, that we should bring this motion to this Parliament so that the issues can be ventilated. And Port of Spain North, as I say that, Port of Spain North in his response to Naparima, spoke about the number of ministers that were under the government I led, the number of ministers that I had removed, or caused to be removed, or whom had resigned from offices, ministers of national security. I do not have any regret or apology for doing that. We had the political will, the courage to do what was right to do. If a minister was not performing, then the minister would have to go. But that's not happening under this government. Today, I think, is 58 days or 59 days since the Minister Darrell Smith matter came up. Some report to be brought, 58 or 59, that we will deal with ministers who do not perform or perform inappropriately.
Yes.
It was raised by Port of Spain North. Raised by Port of Spain North.
No accountability.
And so I have not seen, the country is not seeing the majority, any concrete measures, any decisive action on the part of the government. What the population has been waiting for 2 years, 9 months for minister is to, look, bring a plan, do something. We expect that they will continue as they've been doing, blaming everybody, taking no responsibility, Mr. Deputy Speaker. But right now in this country, people are overwhelmed. They feel threatened. They live in constant fear. Where there's a robbery home, where there's the home invasions that you reminded me of, the kidnapping, government has thrown hands up in the air. Carjacking, my colleagues reminded me. All these things are taking. When you send your children out, you can't sleep, You don't know if they're coming back home. And not because they're bad children, but because of the level of criminality in our country. Some parents are driven to the point where they stay on the phone with their children as soon as the children leave the school compound. But they know it's happening in the schools as well. Your children are not even safe in schoolrooms. Deputy Speaker, the people of this country just want the government to fulfill its basic duty. I started saying there's a basic priority duty to protect them and keep them safe. And if they cannot do that, they should either do the responsible thing and step aside, they should resign and call an election now. I know it can be done. I know it can be done because, as I said, we had brought the serious crimes down to the lowest in 3 decades, in 31 years. And then, as I close, remember, 6 minutes. 6 minutes. Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, fine. 6 minutes from now. And how did we do it? You said you don't want my advice. You don't want any advice. Fine. You don't want any advice, I give you none. I give you none with respect to crime, but I want you to remember the things we did, that we were able to bring the serious crimes down to the lowest in 31 years. Steady decline. The Rapid Response Unit, the Community Comfort Patrols, which you've shut down. What? The National Operations Center, which you're huffing and puffing and condemning about. That is what will give you the largest reach across the entire country from one spot. Every country, developed, first world, they have a National Operations Center. But you didn't understand that. You pick up the NOC and you put it where? In something called the SSA. When the SSA has its own role and functions under the statute. And then talking about what we did with Intercept and didn't do with Intercept and so on. Who is talking about firing? Who has fired all these people from the present SSA and they have them in courthouse now? Who? So do so, don't like so, you know. What you have to do in terms of intelligence gathering, you have in some ways really damaged the National Operations Center and the whole concept of how it is to work by putting it in the SSA. National Operations Center, what does it mean? You will be able to coordinate all the arms, law enforcement arms of the state, all of them. Is that happening? You had a National Training Agency as well. What has happened to that? Did you put that also into the SSA? Is this SSA now some top-heavy, octopus? Partnership. Octopus with arms reaching everywhere. Is that what it has become? Spy. We had relaunched the E99, so the population had a powerful tool when reporting crimes. We implemented the interagency joint patrols. I've been advocating that for so long. I see recently the minister on his walkabout, or after the walkabout, said, look, we'll do the joint patrols. You didn't have to have 1,300 people die before you put these joint patrols in place, man. We established a counter-human trafficking unit. As I said before, we built police stations, modern police stations, so officers will have a decent place of work. And we didn't build them in any of my constituencies that you like to tell us, only UNC constituents. Built in Arima, built in Piarco, built in Maloney, built in Kumutu, Brasso, Labre, Oropuch, and Maruga. That's where they were built, where they were most needed. We opened the Duncan Street Police Post. You remember that? We trained several batches of CSI, crime scene investigators, to supplement the Homicide Investigations Bureau of the TTPS. I remember we had promised to put GPS in the police vehicles. We promised and we did it. We were able to put that technology in the police vehicles. And we acquired and left for you the 12 vessels out there. And with all of that and more, I repeat, with the same Commissioner of Police, with the same TTPS, with the same Coast Guard, with the same Defense Force, we brought the serious crimes down to the lowest in 3 decades, 31 years. 31 years. We were able to bring that crime down. So what's the way forward? They said they don't want any advice. But it is clear that they have nothing in place, nothing
Remember, you
to be
have
done
2 more
to deal-
minutes.
Thank you, sir, to deal with the crime. And again, I support this motion. There is a Savile thing. I support this motion brought by my colleague. I congratulate him for his contributions. And I await to hear with bated breath what it is government will tell us that they have in mind to put a slide on the increase in murder rate. There's a video, I don't know how many of us saw it, with the Honorable Minister doing the electric slide. Yes? Yeah. And That's all good. That's all well and good. But what about, his performance in bringing the murder rate, to slide down that murder rate? What about when you look at things, it's shaky and it's electric, and what's electric? The only thing electric is a terrifying situation in this country when it comes to crime. And I just want to put one more comment to Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West, When you're pointing at people, what is when you dig a hole for someone, you fall into it. So I want him to tell me who has this Hublot watch on his side, which costs us $35,000. Yeah? Well, you want to talk about jewelry? $20 looking like Gucci beads. And what about going online and seeing our Honourable Prime Minister in Savile Row suits advertised at £5,000 for one? $50,000 online. It's there now. We just checked it again. And that person has got a $3 million contract somewhere at UTT. And so, look, be careful of your Gucci stories.
Members.
Be careful of those.
Silence.
And, Deputy Speaker, in the last few seconds, again, I support this motion wholeheartedly. And I call on the government to do, the Prime Minister, to fire the Minister of National Security now.
I recognize the member for point 14.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Excuse. Ropuch East, retract that statement.
Deputy Speaker, my statement is of deep regret.
Proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I rise today in response of a motion that I can outwardly reject from the start of my contribution, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Coming from MP for Naparima, I want to touch on, he spoke for a long while, but I want to touch on one area that he mentioned in his closest comments, the word patriotism. The word patriotism. He seems to want to pronounce, the member for Naparima, pronounce that he is patriotic. And the people on that other side, they are patriotic. But I said to him, and I say to them again, Margaret Thatcher once said that if a lady has to say that she's a lady, then she's not. Patriotism must be shown, must be manifested in your actions, in what you do and what you say. And let me tell you something. MP for Princess Tong, shut up.
Member for Princess Tong, kindly vacate the chamber, please. Members. Okay, members. Honorable members, once we recognize the standing orders, my job will be very easy. As the Deputy Speaker, I'm going to recognize the standing orders and I'm going to maintain the decorum of this House, honorable or otherwise. I say no more, and I will have only recognized the member for point 14. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the question of patriotism always troubles these people on the other side because it touches them to their heart. You can see them they do not attend national functions unless they're in power. You don't see them around, none whatsoever. The leader of the opposition, she plays mass every time when she's in power. You ever see her partake in carnival when she's out of power?
I would like you to recognize the member appropriately. Right? Appropriately. Proceed.
Let me touch on the area of the patriotism, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I'm going to touch on it because I want to demonstrate to you what true patriotism is. Let me tell you what it is. I served in the Defense Force for 36 years, 1 month, and 17 days. And during that time, myself, General Antoine will also talk about it. We were instrumental in 1970 dealing with the remnants of the North freedom fighters in the hills of Trinidad and Tobago. In 1990, the only trained bomb disposal technician in Trinidad and Tobago was your good self, who had to go into the Red House, go at the police headquarters, go at TTT before anyone else to ensure that there were no explosive devices in any one of those areas, before anybody else can go, single-handedly, car by car, room by room, building by building. In 1990, the only trained bomb disposal technician in Trinidad and Tobago was your good self. I had to do that. That is patriotism. That is patriotism. A story you've never been told, I'm telling it today. That is patriotism. In 1994, General Antoine was the commanding officer of the CARICOM battalion. I was second in command. We were sent from this government of Trinidad and Tobago to deal with Operation Restore Democracy in Haiti under non-permissive entry. We went there under non-permissive entry when it was a hostile environment. That is patriotism. Love for one country. The love for one country. That's the definition. It says the love and defense of one country. That is patriotism. So when you talk about patriotism, MP from Naparima, understand which one of you on that other side have done human service to the country of Trinidad and Tobago? Which one of you have been a member of the Defense Force, the Protective Services? Which one? Which one of your children has been a member of the Defense Force, the Public Service, or anything like that? Which one? Which one? Which one? Name it. Where is the sacrifice for this country? Where is it?
Member for
where is the sacrifice for this country?
48-4.
Expound.
The speaker is talking about his service, but he's casting aspersions on the service, the credibility, the integrity of members opposite. This motion is a substantive motion on him, not on the opposition.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Overruled. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. You see, because I serve this country, and you serve yourself. I serve this country.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, he's now saying he served the country and those in the opposition serve themselves. Are you going to permit that to stay on the record?
Have a seat. Have a seat. Member for point 14, I would like you to rephrase or retract. Either way, but before you have your seat, members, again, I'm going according to the standing orders, and I would not tolerate the outbursts and the standing up unless you are identifying a particular standing order. Proceed. And as I said, retract or rephrase.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, they serve the country and at the same time they gratify themselves.
Listen. Member, retract the statement.
I retract the statement, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Listen, members, again, I have ruled. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we are all concerned in this country about the murder rate in Trinidad and Tobago. Concerns each and every one of us. It's an area that we know is a barometer by which crime is measured. And it's a concern for me as Minister of National Security to lose one life is a life too many. Because a life that is lost is somebody's son, somebody's daughter, somebody's brother, somebody's nephew, somebody's sister. And therefore it concerns me very much when a life is lost, when a murder is committed in Trinidad and Tobago. But I want us to understand that when we talk about the murder in Trinidad and Tobago, we all have a role to play, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It starts from discipline, discipline of our young people, of our youth, discipline in our very society. And we know for quite some time, we know for a while, that when we talk about discipline of our youths, you know, the member for Siparia, there's one person who had made a decision to remove discipline from schools, you know. And, you know, she talks about we going back into a turmoil. Sorry, the member for Siparia, sorry. With all due respect, the member for Siparia. The member for Siparia talks that we are going back into a time warp, and we should not go back into history. But there's always a cause and effect. There's a cause and effect of actions. You can't be part of the cause and not be part of the effect. That's right. You cannot be as karma. That is karma. You cannot be part of the cause and not be part of the effect. If you're the cause of something, you must also be part of the effect of something. So that when we talk about the destructions of the security architecture, the security industry, when they were in power, there's a cause and effect relationship, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And every time we talk about it, they said, don't go back there. Don't talk about it. But we are where we are today based on decisions and actions that they did in their time. We are suffering the consequences of the actions that they did between 2010 to 2015. We have to talk about it. We have to talk about the destruction of the security architecture. We have to talk about the Rismi scandal. We have to talk about the absence of the vessels to protect our borders. We have to, and we'll continue to talk about it, because we are suffering the effect of those decisions that took place under your administration. We are, and we continue so to do. We continue to do that. But I want to pause for this while to thank the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago and my colleagues and the Cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago for stabilizing this country, for bringing us to a sense of reality, because we were going down a stream between 2010 to 2015. Mr. Deputy Speaker, what has the opposition did in the last 5 years? And I will repeat it. I'm going to talk about it again. I'm going to talk about it. Talk what I did just now. I will talk about it again. Because in that last 5 years, we are talking about the Minister of National Security. You had 5 ministers of national security. I will talk about it again. 5 ministers of national security. And what did you do? The first minister, Brigadier Johnson, he a good man. He was my instructor. Very good man, very good gentleman. Big, very good gentleman. The mistake he made was joining the United National Congress. And let me tell you something. I want to rechristen that party, that thing, you know. It's not the United National Congress. It's the Unpatriotic National Congress. Unpatriotic National Congress. That's the meaning of the UNC. Always an oxymoron to put unpatriotic and national together. It's an oxymoron. You can't be national and at the same time be unpatriotic. It's an oxymoron. Then you had Mr. Jack Warner. Claim to fame, fire truck, and breaking down tents as Minister of National Security. That was his claim to fame. Yeah? Yeah. That was his claim to fame. He writes on the sunshine. He has all the ideas now about security now. All the ideas on the sunshine. By the time the AG finished with him, he'll be in a place where the sun doesn't shine. Then you had Mr. Emmanuel George. I have no feelings about Mr. Emmanuel. He's thrown into the deep end. Mr. Gary Griffith. Well, you heard the member for Port of Spain, North St. Anne's, he talks about him. I'll see no more, as I call Mr. Gary Griffith. Then Brigadier Carl Alfonso, a man who always wear green. The day he put on yellow shirt. A very good.
Members, please.
A very good man. The mistake he made was to join the Unpatriotic National Congress. But let us examine the facts, Mr. Deputy Speaker, because the member for Siparia spoke about serious crime done during that time. She spoke about more children going missing, more women have been attacked. Now, unprecedented levels, the motion says. Unprecedented level. Let's examine the facts. And I want to use the base years. I don't want to use the years when we came into power, when the UNC came into power. So I'm going to rule out 2010, and I'm going to rule out 2015 because we both contributed in those years. Let's use 2011, 2012, and 2013. And let's use 2016, 2017, and 2018. Let's see what the facts say. Let us see what the facts say, because the member for Siparia come on, she said, serious crime went down. More children, more women. Let's see what the fact says. I'm going to start with firearm and ammunition. Nope. You said serious crimes. You said serious crimes. You said serious crimes. The answer was for it.
Silence. Silence.
In terms of ammunition seizure, in 2011, 425 firearms, 8,465 ammunition were taken. In 2016, and that way a comparative year, 765 firearms, 19,543 ammunition was taken off the streets. Yeah? In 2012, you had 420 firearms, 8,650 rounds of ammunition. In 2017, comparative year, we took 1,064 firearms off the streets, the largest, 18,000 rounds of ammunition, the largest. Yes? Let me go again. In terms of narcotics seizure, in 2011, in 2012, we had 129 kilograms, 2013, 173. In 2016, we had 265.76 kilograms, 225.61 kilograms, 297. More drugs taken off the streets than during your period. More. The arrest during your period, 2011, 2012, 2013. 2011, 4,044. In corresponding time, 2016, 11,672 arrests. In 2012, arrests under your charge, 10,212. In our 2017, 12,532. 2018 to date, 2013 to date, you had 9,751. In our time to date, 5,917. How? Serious crimes? Serious crimes? Let me give you the figures for serious crimes. You saying that, to quote you, serious crime was done during your time. Look at, I'm using the same base here. 2011, 2012, 2013, 2016, 2017, 2018. 2011, serious crimes under your control reported 15,877, 19% detection rate. That is 2011. Compare it with 2016, 11,031. Detection rate, 24%. Serious crime was done in your time? Come on. Yeah, come on. Serious crime reported. Your member from Siparia said serious crime was done. Look at the stats. 2012. Serious crime. 17,841 serious crimes reported. A detection rate of 19%. Comparative year 2017, 13,113. A detection rate of 31%. And you telling us about serious crime was done in your time? Making it up. Making it up as you go along. Making it up as you go along. Smokes and mirrors. Smokes and mirrors. But I'm talking to the country in this time. 2013, your serious crime, 13,147, an 18% detection rate. Up to 2018 now, 5,823, a 35% detection rate. How can you come and tell this house that serious crime was done in your period? Come on, comparative year we're talking about apples and apples, not apples and grapes. Not apples and grapes. I've given you another one. Victims of crime, 17 years and under, because you talk about the children. And this is what the motion speaks to, you know. Let me remind the house, you know. Let me remind the house, and MP for Naparima. Yeah? Whereas women, children, and the elderly have been under the attack in the most vicious and brutal ways ever experienced. Ever experienced as a result of rampant and bloody criminal elements. Ever experienced. Let me give you the victims under 17. I'm going comparative year again. Comparative year again. 2011. 977 victims of crimes. Yeah? 977. Yeah? And it's a whole other category. I could read the category. This source of crime and problem and branch analysis.
At this time, I would like to suspend the sitting. We will break for tea. Excuse. Right, at this time, I'd like to suspend the sitting. We'll break for tea, and we'll resume at 5 p.m. And also at that time, the MP for Princestown can resume Chief Whip after tea.